Hello, everyone, and welcome to RHAP's coverage of Australian Survivor Brains V Brawn II. I'm your host, Shannon, Guss, here for a feedback show. So excited about this one. We have someone from the new era from Survivor 47 who is dipping his toe now into the recap game, or the feedback game, at the very least. And I'm so excited because I had already ticked wanting to podcast with this person off my bucket list, and now I get to take actually podcasting with them off my bucket list. So very, very excited to have the great Andy Rueda here. Andy, thank you for being here.
Oh, how you going, Shannon? Look, I'm so excited to be here for a couple of reasons. Number one, I love Australian Survivor, and I've been such a big fan of you and the show for going on like 9 years now. And so it is a dream come true to be here today. Number two, we've got a mutual friend, right? His name is Omar Zahir, and he likes to come in and lead with an Aussie accent, which is quite shit, I reckon. And so I'd like to come in and beat him at his own game today, but you could be the judge of that, Shannon.
Oh my God, that was honestly really good. Like Oma found dead and buried. I will say the one word I feel like you didn't nail was Aussie, ironically.
Aussie.
Went too much on the or, I think. Something like I might do. Maybe your Aussie accent is too influenced by my non-Aussie accent. I always find it funny when people are like, I'm their understanding of what an Australian is, and they think my accent is Australian when it's just a mess. But yeah, I think that was the one. Other than that, no notes. I feel like that was perfect. Not just because I want to take the shot at Oma as well.
So I did beat Omer. That, as long as we're clear there.
Low bar, great. Incredibly low bar, but you did it. Andy, I'm so excited to have you here. I know you're a big fan of Australian Survivor. You mentioned Ferris on your pre-game interview. You've been listening to the podcast content. We met and hung out in 2022 at a Bryce and Wen event in Boston. Yep. And then you were on Survivor. There were so many future survivors at that event, by the way. Apparently, I also met Charlie at that event. I met Bruce, who had played, but I hadn't seen it, and then would go on to play again. Like, that was just, like, I think every second person at that event would eventually go on to play Survivor at some point.
I mean, because, the Bryce and Wens have gotten much bigger in the U.S. over the years, and, like, Teeny would go to the events a lot. Asia, of course, right? So it's a growing thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like a growing thing. And like, I wonder if casting is aware of that. But in any case, I did meet you. I met you a month before I got my first email for casting for Survivor 45. So that was great. That was in Boston, right?
Yeah, the twist would be if there was a casting director at the Bryce and Wen events, just casting every second person, and then that would make sense. It probably speaks to the new era casting that we have, that so many people who are at the Bryce and Wen events are, eventually on the show. And we can definitely talk about that in comparison to Australian Survivor, where we now have confirmation, we're going to talk about it, from Kristen's jury villa, that she nor Kate nor Morgan knew what Rox was. When they were going to Rox, we assumed we were right. And we're going to talk about that because I think the casting of Australian Survivor is obviously very, very different to new era US casting.
Very different, yes. But so you have this side of people who don't know what Rox are, but they're still casting fans who, of course, know these things and think about things as deeply as many of the new era super fan players. So I'm super excited to get into it. I think this has been a really good season. Australian Survivor is in a really, really good place right now. And I think that's been talked about a lot. But like, whether it's the design or the casting or they're just getting lucky, like I feel like every season they have players who are down to like make interesting, bold, innovative moves. Big characters are being created every season. And this does not break the streak from like Heroes vs. Villains, Titans vs. Rebels. And then this one, I think is like a worthy successor.
Yeah, we definitely have people thinking hard about it. And that disparity actually might be the issue of how we feel like these guys are kind of steamrolling the end game. Because yes, like half the people don't know what Rox are and half are thinking about it as hard as like AJ and Miles are. And I truly think that like the AJ Miles Kaylin alliance is one of the most successful and impressive alliances we've had in Australian Survivor. Now that we can see the through line of the extremes of their talents through the merge, I think that is evident, and that creates a bit of a disparity. So maybe that's an issue there. But I love that you're high on the season. I've really enjoyed the season. I feel like people come out of this week a little low on the season because those guys are steamrolling because we were promised Rox. We didn't go to, we just had the dream that we might go to Rox, which is apparently something to tick off the bucket list. So I think that people are coming in a little bit lower, but I agree with you that I've had fun the whole way. Even just analyzing these endgame decisions is fun for me. I've certainly enjoyed all the podcasts I've done on it and my experience. But I think that coming in after Heroes vs. Villains and Titans v Rebels with this new production company, is such a hard slot. You know, those are two of the best seasons of all time. The fact that they could, you know, like this has been fun. It's fine, I think, to just get like fun seasons. Sometimes not everyone's going to be like a top 5 season of all time. It's actually insane that they did that back to back to begin with.
Yeah, for sure. But no, it has been fun, and I think they have built up really big and cool personalities. But I think maybe what fans are experiencing is like your mileage may vary with each of the characters, and that might be like determine how much you're into the season. Like for me, I'm enjoying it, but I'm all about the AJ and Miles show.
Yes.
So like, of course I'm enjoying it. Whereas if they grate on you or you don't like them, then I don't know how you would feel about the season. I don't know if you'd still be watching. So
yeah, exactly. Definitely the way you feel about AJ and Miles is going to contribute. We'll talk about it when we get to the confessional chart, but I think between the two of them, they have like a quarter of all confessionals in the entire season or something crazy. We'll talk about it when we get there. It's a lot. But you're enjoying it. Tell me what you've been liking about this season, what your thoughts are generally.
Well, like as you probably know, I have been such a big fan of Australian Survivor from the beginning because I think that it's really cool that it's carved its own path and own identity that is separate from US Survivor. And I think that they really came into Australian Survivor as a show is coming into its own really quickly, but built up it. And now it has like a lore that's being built up. Right. So everything that people might complain about Australian Survivor, we will get into it with top heavy confessionals and the disparity and everything like that. But it just leads to like big and grandiose drama, which I've been super into. This season in particular, I do like that the fans have sort of risen and like been really, like influencing the game at every step. But like, so, and I can't hide this. I have to lead with this. I do love Miles, and I was a big fan of Karn from the start. Those were two of my favorites, but I am obsessed with AJ. I love AJ. I've loved him from the very start when like he was beefing with Allie, like back in the early days. I was like, I want to see where this guy's game goes. And so I've definitely been rewarded in that sense because at every stage he keeps it interesting and he's always thinking super deeply about things and going like 10 steps ahead, and whatever he does, like there's something to talk about. And whenever there's a player like that, it is super captivating. And I know that I feel like the editors or the producers like agree. And I have no doubt that he is like giving them the most interesting things, which is why he has such a huge confessional count, such a big edit. So I just wonder if, he and or Miles can take it home. But that's where I feel like we are with Australian Survivor a lot. There are these giant characters, and the story, the end game is always, okay, this is the person that we're all like, we feel like we're just watching their games. Like, are they able to take it home, or are they going to be, sniped out at the last second? So that's what I'm tracking.
Yeah, I also haven't loved AJ since the beefing with Allie days. Allie, someone who still has more confessionals than Morgan, which is something that we can talk about. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think in Australian Survivor, you have to earn your confessionals. They talk about in US Survivor, you have to earn everything. No, they're actually pretty even with the confessionals. In Australian Survivor, like they will give it on like a merit-based system. And that's what they feel, I think, that it's gone. And obviously from like a analytical perspective, I've enjoyed firstly Kaylin's confessional, someone who has not had a lot of confessionals. I feel like they could have given us more than that because what he's been doing is so interesting, which we'll talk about as well. But yeah, just from analyzing the game, I'd rather it was a little bit more even. But like from a production perspective, like they want the most interesting thing to turn people away from maths when they're scrolling through channels during dinner. And maybe they take that a bit too far, but I think that has always been the thinking. But as we talk about this disparity, let's get into some of the questions from the week, and we'll talk through kind of your feelings on everyone. But let's talk about rocks or not rocks. Yeah. Firstly, the bombshell that Kristen dropped. Not really a bombshell because again we did guess. But yeah, so Kristen, for the people who can't watch the Jury Villa, it is on Template, and you can probably watch it with a VPN for our international listeners. I don't think that it is on YouTube anymore. But firstly, Jury Villa has actually been fire this season. We'll talk about it. There is a lot of emotion, which might shock people. It's a Coven-based, Jury Villa, and Paulie there as well. So there has been a lot of arguing. This week, Laura got mad at Logan for some of the like burying that Logan contributed to after Laura was out of the game. Everyone also, there was a big thing in your season, there's a big thing every season. That person who went out was like the worst person alive. They were the reason we were beefing. Now we're all good. That's what any line is going to say. Laura was very hurt that Logan contributed to that. And that was a big emotional kind of argument between them. And then Paulie as well really came at Kristen for the fact that she had poisoned his name. And then Kristen was like, but you lied to me. And then they argued. Eventually Logan was like, maybe we chill on this. And then Kristen eventually got up and was like, this was not the experience I anticipated pretty much. And I'm going to my room. So in like her Kristen like bubbly way. But anyway, find the jury villas if you can, is what I'm trying to say.
I would like to watch those. I feel like every jury villa / Ponderosa, it's different. Like a culture is set. Now, I do believe that the mayor of Ponderosa thing is a myth, really. I don't think it has to do with the first one at all. It's really about how you're sending each particular personality to the jury and what they feel. It really doesn't matter what order they come in, really. But at some stage, when a strong personality enters the jury, then some type of culture is established. And so it is different for every season. For my jury, it was very much the other end of that. Very positive. Like the game sort of left once your torch was snuffed. And that's something I'm very, very grateful for. Very lucky, because a toxic Ponderosa / jury villa, that's not where you want to be when you're voted out of the game. But it is interesting to hear what people were saying. Apparently, like Kristen didn't even know that rocks existed, right?
Well, like firstly, I love your thinking about the game, because it's bold to come in and be like, something we've always just kind of said isn't true. And I do love that, because we have to kind of unthink some things. We've always said the mayor of jury villa really matters, but if they're not a strong personality, there's no reason why they should contribute more to anything. And I love that, like, let's just question everything. And I completely agree that makes, I mean, I've never been on a jury, but that makes total sense. In this jury, every personality is strong. Probably till Kristen, so far, who we know is a people pleaser. So Kristen's coming into like the lion's den of 3/4 of the real coven. And Paulie, it's been a lot. So that we can talk about like how the jury might kind of perceive these players going forward. But yes, the other big bombshell, other than all the arguing, was that Kristen said that none of them knew what rocks were. Kristen said she thought that Logan and Zara would make fire. She was like, Logan, I really thought that you would beat Zara in fire. It's very hard to play a game that you don't know the rules of. And I would love to talk to you about this, because I was so annoyed. But then I'm like, am I a hypocrite? Because I know that like in Titans v Rebels, when they went to at the 12-person vote where Eden ends up going home and Jaden ends up flipping, so they don't go to the unanimous discussion. But I was kind of like, why are any of you going to rocks for tribes that you've all been beefing with for like 6 weeks? But a lot of them didn't know what rocks was, including Ferris. Now, I know we both love Ferris, and I give Ferris a lot of grace for not knowing what rocks is. So am I a hypocrite? But then I'm like, but Ferris is like all-time casting, and maybe I give more grace to people when like the show needs them. A Ferris, a Kirby, for sure. If you're like in the upper echelon of like best casting ever, I actually think I will give grace, because like then you're delivering all the other stuff. But like Morgan and Kate, who I actually think has played really well mostly, but like, and Kristen, I'm like, I think someone like Kristen, who's mostly cast on like, not to be so harsh, but like the aviation firefighter thing is doing a lot of the heavy lifting on when, because Australian Survivor is going to look at professions. That's brawny. Morgan's an Olympian. They need one per season. Speaks for itself. I think it's contractual. And I don't know. We haven't seen enough of Morgan to really know. But I feel like at that stage, you have to know the rules, okay? You aren't big enough above the game to know the rules. And I think it just pains me as someone, like, you don't have to be big fans. I just want to like say that. Just do the research. Yeah, I've had players confirm to me they get a rule book. Read the rule book before you get it. Or in the 41 days that you've been in the game, surely you were curious enough to at one point during Confessional say to the producers, what would happen in a tie? What would we do there? Like, well, I think it just breaks my brain, Andy.
No, I get it. This is how I feel. Like, to be fair, rocks has never occurred in Australian Survivor, right? So it is not built into.
They did go to the unanimous decision one time, but I don't think that they necessarily are thinking about the final 8 of All Stars. So, and if they miss All Stars, honestly, good for them, to be honest. Like,
but fine. That doesn't burn into your brain unless you see the visual of people the rocks, which has never happened on Australian Survivor. So I agree. You do not need to be a super fan to be on the show, to be amazing casting. That is not a requirement. But I personally respect people who do their homework once they know that they're going to be on a show. I don't care what show it is, whether it's Survivor, whether it's anything. Like, I cannot relate to like signing up for something and just winging it, like not knowing the rules, not knowing, like not watching previous seasons. And so I think it is true that rocks has never happened. If I were a recruit and just like watching the seasons, I would be curious as to what would happen in a vote, in a tie vote situation. But once you're that deep into the game, also, I think there's been a lot of like close votes that must have been on their minds, like what would occur in a tie. And I do wonder if the producers don't tell them. Or would, like, if they were to ask a producer, like, what happens in a deadlock, I wonder if they get the answer or not.
I should really hope so. I think the producer should be answering the questions and keeping people informed, even though it's completely their fault. They should be helping people out, especially if they care enough to ask. It's like, okay, well, that's the homework that they're doing in the moment. You know, maybe some people don't have a lot of time to think about it before. I know, like, Chrissy from a few seasons ago wasn't a big fan, and she also got pulled in really last minute. But I do think that in like the 6 weeks that they're out there, if someone thinks this is my homework, actually, I've been thinking about what would happen in a tie. I think that they should ask it. But we see this disparity where AJ is like, I've dreamed of wanting to go to Rocks, and they don't know what Rocks is. And what I find so funny about this is that when it goes to the revote, Miles says, oh, I knew it. Hope you guys are ready to go to Rocks. And I feel like they must have been like, what? Like,
what does that mean?
It's so funny to me to think that now confused. Why do they keep saying Rocks, and what does that mean? I want you to put yourself in the position where you don't know what Rocks is, because it's quite a convoluted rule that makes a lot of sense based on like decades of precedent of US Survivor. But if you don't know what Rocks is, imagine someone saying to you, hope you're ready to go to Rocks, and you're like, what does that possibly?
What is that sentence?
Yeah, what could that be? Like, what are we doing? Like, what does he mean? Like, we're doing like rock, paper, scissors, or like, are we throwing rocks in like a what?
Walking across rocks. Yeah,
I want to be in that moment where it's like, I hope you're ready to go to Rocks, but you've never heard that Rocks exists. That must be so confusing to you.
But that goes to show, and I had this feeling before I knew that information, like that goes to show how strong of a tactic that was for Miles and AJ, who are fans, who definitely know what Rocks are, who, have seen,
dreamed of even thinking about
dreamed of desiring to go to Rocks. It really puts them on the front foot, because Rocks or the deadlock before you draw Rocks is such a, it's such a high stakes debate, and it really, really pays to be prepared as to what you're going to say, what your approach is going to be. We've seen it in US Survivor, right? And we're seeing it here. Like, Miles and AJ knew what the game plan was going to be as soon as they got to that stage. And they're going up against people who literally don't know what Rocks are until this moment. And so I think that influenced their confidence in saying, listen, we don't have the immunity necklace. Kaylin does, but we're just going to push this to Rocks, and the pressure is going to have us win the day. And with this context that the other side didn't even know what was going to happen, I think that made it, a very smart thing to do.
Yes, 100%. They never thought they were going to Rocks because the women didn't know what Rocks was, and they weren't prepared to go to it because they were learning about it in the moment. And I think that gave them so much leverage, because you should be using the threat of Rocks at every turn, and yet at most of those turns they still didn't know what it was. I mean, we questioned why Zara was even the target. Logan said they thought Zara was less likely to have an idol, which is valid. Again, Kristen thinks that Logan is beating Zara at fire, so there's something happening there for what she thinks is happening. But I do wonder, like, at the point where there's a revote at all, and they know that there's not been a split to come over the top of, if there's Rocks, it's like, Zara, we're going to take this to Rocks. We're getting that leverage in. Don't do that. Come in with us because we targeted like an AJ or a Miles. And then, they could appeal to Zara more because she's not the target. But you can't appeal to someone when you don't know what you're appealing on. You actually think that you're sending her to fire. Or maybe Kaylin Morgan never thought about what would happen in that situation, which is crazy that they didn't ask earlier that day, given that it looked like it was going to be possibly a 4-4.
Yeah, but for Logan, right, I feel like she is a fan, right?
No, Logan knew.
Remember, right? So Logan is a fan, and Logan knows what Rocks are. So if I were her, I would be priming them with this. I don't know why.
Well, she didn't want to, because she thought that might spook them, and she wanted to prime Kristen, but Kristen got stung by a wasp.
Oh.
So Kristen was, she was dealing with having been stung by a wasp. So she couldn't be told what Rocks were 2 hours before maybe going to Rocks. It's so ridiculous. I hope Kristen's okay. But she didn't want to spook Kaylin Morgan, and then she felt like she couldn't. We've seen, like, this is AJ's control. She felt like she couldn't push someone like an AJ because they were protecting someone like an AJ, and then she also felt like she thought Zara wouldn't have an idol. So that's why she was like in this tenuous spot with she just gotten Kaylin Morgan back and didn't want to be like, we draw Rocks at a tie, and they'd be like, I don't want to do that. And so she thought maybe just like confounding them with them in the moment was like the best bet. It wasn't a good bet. The 4-4 was not a good bet for the women in this.
But also Logan kind of seemed unprepared in that moment. I mean, I don't know how you felt about it. I thought she just like kind of gave up in that moment, where she could at least she gave a pretty decent argument to Kristen at one point, but then she was like prefacing it by saying, but I would never ask you to go to Rocks. Whereas, I mean, this is kind of do or die. This is your life in the game, right? So I think I would have thought she would be pushing that a lot harder, but that's just not what she did.
Yeah, we've seen people like Hayden use it as a strategy to be the target, to get people to go to rocks for you because you're immune, and that is like advantageous. I did think I asked her about, at least, appealing to Kristen, and she said that was a big regret for her of not isolating Kristen to be like, you take me to rocks. And even again, if Kristen does that, not even sure if AJ and Miles go to rocks. I mean, they only wanted to desire going to rocks. Not sure. I mean, maybe they would because AJ and Miles are crazy, but there is an argument that at that point, if Kristen has all the leverage of like, this is my one ally in the game, true, an ally to be fair, who has nighed other people who have saved her, like a Karen, but this is my one ally. And actually, more important than Logan being her ally, I think, is the fact that every other person picking rocks but Kristen, Kate, Morgan, AJ, and Miles have been power players in the game, and it would upend that, even if people on her quote-unquote side, and Kate and Morgan go. I think that that's really strong for why we thought Kristen should go to rock. So I feel like Logan apparently, regrets not kind of isolating Kristen in that leverage of like, we're both on the bottom. Like, you really should just upend it for me. I mean, that's definitely how we felt. That's definitely how Chappelle felt. And by the way, Chappelle, I ended up texting Chappelle that none of them knew what rocks was, and he wanted me to rant on his behalf. So I hope that that's been enough for him. But what did you think about, like, because we were harsh on Kristen not going to rocks. Like, what did you feel about whether everyone should go to rocks, particularly Kristen, who it feels like, is going to be next out? So we have to be harsher, surely, on the fact that that's what she set herself up for.
Well, here's the thing about Kristen is they made it clear that she was looking to shake things up and make her move and exert agency. I think probably her perception out there was that she wasn't doing anything. She wasn't one of the power players. So to give her credit, like, she had her agenda to do that for the past few votes. Even the Karen vote, I know that I don't think any of you liked what she did with Karen, right?
No.
But I think that there was something there. I think the only thing that went wrong was the execution, where it was just, I think that she correctly identified the fact that she needed to do something to shake things up. And exerting agency by maybe keeping Karen just by flipping her vote, I think that could have been a path. It got blown up by Karen, unfortunately. But she knew she had to do something. And so given that, it does surprise me that she didn't go ahead with forcing rocks, which is interesting. I think it's really interesting that, they all have to come up with a consensus. So even if there's peer pressure, even if Kate and Morgan capitulate, she could still be the one person to force it. And that is putting your game on the line. And that is kind of meeting AJ and Miles in terms of showing your cojones. And I think that would have been really good on all accounts. And then she didn't do it. And then we see that she has absolutely no leverage the next round. And so that makes me, so Rox is kind of facing a deadlock and facing the threat of Rox. It doesn't happen too often in Survivor, whether it's US or Australian Survivor. But I think probably more than people give it credit for, it probably is the right move. In many situations, especially in the end game. And this is something that I thought about when I was out there, where it's just like, there comes a point when you're at the end game where you just have to put it on the line, where you have to give yourself a shot to win, give yourself a shot to do something that will actually, give yourself the chance at first place. And if it fails, if you draw the rock, then you're out. But at least you went and did something. Whereas if you don't time it right, or if you just don't make it happen when you need to, then you find yourself where Kristen is on the next vote, just with no options.
Especially because Kristen left on the next vote in such an earned way, where I feel like Kate and Morgan, again, at least had AJ protecting them, where Kristen had nothing. So it wasn't, I was hoping maybe for her that she could seem passive enough that they would drag her, but even that isn't a winning game. So I think when you look at, the way that you look at rocks as, statistically, which I know we both kind of love. I've always been really harsh on Shan not going to rocks, because I felt like at the point where she promised the world to get the AK, I was going to say AJ, listening, AK, Shawnee and Brookside to flip on Jackie. She promised she'd vote with them. She was never going to do that. They said, we'll never vote for you. At the final tribal council, it became 5 votes with Harry and Lockie, a majority that would never vote for her. She couldn't turn on her own side. She had to go to rocks. At that point, she had to have a backbone in that moment, or she was going to have 0% chance of winning the game. Of course, if you stick your hand in a bag, there's a 25% chance you go home for her right now. 1 in 5 for the people taking rocks today. So it's in the season. So it's about does that give you a better chance? For like Kate and Morgan, I thought they had a better chance with AJ, who, to be fair, has been protecting them, although they are very reliant on AJ right now. But I still thought that was a better shot than the 1 in 5 shot, or I mean, like 2 in 5 of two of them getting out, or one of them. Like, I thought I would rather rely on the chance of AJ, whereas I feel like Kristen had little to rely on, and I would much rather, especially when 80% of the rock draws would have gone great for her. Like, I just think it's really just stats in that moment of the stats of you picking the rock, or people you like are working with picking rocks, and like trying to add all of that up against how much you have going forward in the game if you aren't because you aren't the target. And I think for Kristen, the math wasn't mathing. Like, I think that her chance was a lot better in the 80% shot of one of the power players through the merge picking a rock.
Yeah. And well, I do think that there's a lot to be said about like just being put on the spot in that moment. Like, am I gonna really put my hand in to a bag and draw
learning what
rocks?
rocks are in that moment.
Yeah. You're learning about it 10 seconds ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And now it's like your entire game is on the line. And I think I've heard players express it in the past where forget about the odds. There's just like this idea that like the worst, like going home by a rock is like worse than any other fate in Survivor.
Is it?
And
so that's worse than getting dragged to the end like Shannon and having zero chance to win?
It's like a gut emotional reaction that I think a lot of players feel. They just feel like it takes agency away from their game. I disagree. I think it's calculated risk. And it's something that in many different cases could be the game-changing move, that you need. So yeah, if I were Kristen, I definitely would have learned the rules before playing and like known what rocks are, and then facing that situation have been prepared to
learn the rules. Take a risk. Yes, definitely. That would be the first step, and then not get stung by the wasp. Imagine the world in which Kristen doesn't get stung by the wasp, but then Logan can have more time to talk to her about what rocks are. A lot happening on that day, but I think it's really interesting the way we just like think about rocks. I think mess this up. Honestly, when I was thinking about it, I'm like, Kate and Morgan shouldn't go to rocks, so there's no rocks. I wasn't thinking like Kristen is different from Kate and Morgan. All the credit to Chappelle coming in and being like, Kristen alone can force rocks. And she has the opportunity to, erroneously, because Kate and Morgan should never give her the power to do that. But they did, because they didn't know that she would have the power to do that, because they didn't know what rocks was. And she could have exploited that had she also, to be fair, thought about it and know what rocks was. But I haven't spoken to Kristen yet in the X interview. I wonder if she even thought like, I can do this alone. Like, Kate and Morgan on my quote unquote side aren't, but that doesn't matter. It's a unanimous decision and I can have the individual leverage. I didn't think about that in the moment. I don't know that she thought about that. It seems like Logan didn't think about that to isolate and speak to Kristen. So I think it's like the way we think about rocks is like side v side, obviously, in this tie. Right. It's actually not what it is. Like, she individually could have done that. And I don't know if they all underestimated. I certainly did, her like individual power in a moment that, again, never should have even happened, but does happen because they don't know what rocks is.
Yeah. But also like, and then say what you will, like, about how you think about this, but no matter what, sort of the end game of Survivor is theater to some extent. You know what I mean? Like, the jury's watching. I don't know how this jury feels about each person in particular, but it is a moment for you to be like, to raise your hand, be like, I am the person making this happen. And if, based off my impressions of like what the jury's thinking, I think that they've been annoyed by Miles and AJ the entire time, but have reached a point where they just respect it because they are exerting all the agency. They're doing all the things. They're making all the big moves at Tribal Council that are very public, right? And so I think that that is a perfect position for Kristen to do something of her own accord that completely surprises Miles and AJ and sabotages their plans. And then I think like a lot of those jury members are like, finally, like, let's go.
They would have loved that.
Yeah. So it was a missed opportunity, unfortunately.
Yeah. Asserting that agency and having that moment, I think in an otherwise social but passive game for Kristen, I think would have been very important. But it does speak to jury chances, and I would love to start talking about that as we look at this end game, because the jury did not like when Kristen said that they didn't know about rocks. Other than Kristen, this jury is fans so far. Laura, Paulie, Karen, and Logan are all really big fans. Laura actually got mad at Kristen about how the jury feel is crazy, but she was like, Kristen ends up apologizing because Laura's like, do you understand what it's like to be voted out? And then to hear that 3 of the 8 of you don't know freaking rocks are. And I was like, honestly, channel it, girl. I get it. But at the point of the disparity that we see where I think like, again, like variety in casting is good, but when we see this disparity where like 3 of the final 8 don't know what rocks is, I think maybe that disparity is getting a little bit too too large. We want like kind of versatility across the board, but like that kind of feels like a chasm. And I think the jury are seeing that. And I said on the recap, I felt like these three guys, especially in AJ and Miles, are in the best jury position. And I do think people said on the exit they really actually liked AJ. I think people like Miles' story. I think they like them more than we see. We see them at their most like irritant, probably because that's all their moves. But like at camp, I think things, especially for AJ, are really good. That's why he's dominated socially so much, because people actually do really like him. So I thought that already. And now seeing the way that like fans might react to a Kate or Morgan who didn't know what Rox was, especially because it is a jury of fans who I think will respect the game. I think this is like a really good position for AJ and Miles, and they are each other's biggest jury competitors. And we can talk about Kaylin, but that's definitely how I see it right now.
For sure. That makes perfect sense, that they're like, there must be some really good social game happening behind the scenes with AJ's game, because that's the only way to explain it. But like I said, I've just been so on board with him the entire time, because he provides so much entertainment and creativity with his moves. We could talk about even with the hostage thing, because I don't think we've taken a moment to even stop down and like recognize, first of all, how entertaining that was, because it's so original, right? It was like super fun.
That was my favorite week of the show, I think.
Yeah, it was super cool. And it really, so I think on like a sort of like,
it went on for 2 weeks, but that I love the swap. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Yeah,
that was a good part of the season.
Yeah,
but like on a low level, I feel like we saw where it went wrong with the hostage stuff, but it made sense on sort of like this low level where, number one, I think AJ felt like the swap tribe that he was on, he set it up really well. Like he had all his ducks in a row. He had all the options, right? And he didn't want to go to tribal council. And then he also recognized that incentive wise, the Brawn guys on the other tribe like had aligned incentives. So on that level, it really was like really, really, really smart. And I think he attempted to shore it all up on all sides by bringing in Noonan and Pauly and saying like, hey, this is just something I'm doing. This is a ploy to keep you safe. So I want to like, when that happened, I know like, I feel like his position got blown up for a bit there and he recovered, but it just goes to show the kind of player that he is, where he is going to go for it. He's going to do something. He's going to key on like a logical reason to do something bold, and he's not going to hesitate. You know what I mean? And obviously he's just got really good social game in a like a low key way to make it all work for him. But then it also, I think it's like, he's a poker player, right? So it set up his table image, which is like, his perception as a player. And I think it really set the tone where someone like Jesse is like, oh my God, I didn't know AJ was capable of that. And it allowed him to hit the ground running at the merge and just be very forward and be out in front. And whether it's his, the competition around him or whatever, or the buddy system that was set up at the merge, it just all was the perfect environment for him to exert all the agency he's wanted to do. And I just think he's played like a really, really, really strong game overall. And he's tried a lot of things, and you have to give credit to like his survivability when he aggravates people or like things don't go well. I just think he's playing a really strong game.
Interesting. I mean, I don't know that I feel like the hostage situation set up his merge game. I would be interested to hear from AJ how much he thinks that worked. As you said, maybe on just like, you're a big game player, or like it didn't turn off Kate and Morgan at the very least. Like maybe they were interested in this person who, to be fair, was threatening them into throwing challenges. But I think for me, what I see more kind of like the opposite is like how well he's recovered from that. I mean, if AJ wins, we could look back at the hostage situation possibly as like his top 5 baby moment. Tony was doing this stuff, and like that was what Tony always said, right? He would spend the day kind of burying himself, and then the night kind of thinking about how to unbury himself. And I've always said that Kagiyan is one of the best winning games ever played, because Tony had to play like 200%. He couldn't just play a dominant 100% game. He had to that 100% to get to neutral of his own burying, and then 100% to get it to like one of the best games of all time. And I feel like for AJ, that's more it to me, because AJ's merge game to me is like night and day, much like Tony's strategizing from his swap game. Like AJ's like merge game, AJ's swap game is like, for me, it was like the issue that he invested so much into like Pauly and Noonan, and then like let it go so intensely. Like it was that inconsistency for me And obviously he put people off compared to like his merge game, which has been about like completely accruing allies in a really strong, consistent way. Like now we know it's been the Miles, Kaylin, Kate, Morgan, poorly Miles brought in. He had like a side thing with Zara. As I've said on the recap, like I think the final 6 is probably his top 5 allies that he would want with him. Like it's actually been a very consistent, measured, protected, social, strong merge game for me. It's very different, but it's like the fact that he could build back to that speaks to a social game more than you would possibly think for AJ, but it's clearly been there.
I know, I agree. And I think honestly, one of the best ways to I think good players are defined by how good they are at picking allies. And I think we look at how well he was set up in the merge. I don't think you could overstate how key it was that he won over Kate and Morgan. That's not something I saw coming. I don't think that's how you would have written it up.
No.
And I don't know what it is. Like he started chatting her up when they were both out of the challenge. That was the beginning.
A lot of it is flirting, it seems. Flirting that's working somehow.
It is. The edit is telling us that it is working, right?
It worked.
And it's kind of like this. It's funny because it kind of goes both ways. Like he had a confessional last episode where he was like, and it was totally freaking bitten, but he was like, but I would consider working with Kate because she just has these eyes. That's just very tempting. I'm like, what is that? What does that mean? But anyway,
I was also confused. Did he talk about her lips? What was happening there?
I know. But anyway, like if you want to like kind of reduce it to like a core move he made, quote unquote, getting to the merge and then winning over Kate and Morgan,
that was it.
Who have so much like their duo has mattered so much in all of these votes. And he's been the Kate and Morgan whisperer. That has given him all of his power while maintaining working relationships with everyone else that he's crossed paths with throughout the game. So he's really good at that as well. Because I mean, it's hard for me to track even like how Zara has felt about him this entire time. But what's clear is that in some way she does prioritize that alliance, right? And that's just one example. So he's just he's really been working it, and it's been really rewarding to watch.
Yeah, I mean, Zara prioritizes, I think, AJ of the 3. She says, I mean, to be fair, she says it to the girls, but she says Kaylin's not in her endgame plans. She might have an agenda in saying that. She also says to them that she would prefer to keep AJ rather than Miles. Again, maybe agendas and all of this, she's not going with that side, but we do know that Miles has targeted her. I think that AJ is her connection in that group. And I think that you're right. Kate and Morgan were the key to the entire post-merge, which at the time was confusing because they had like 5 confessionals between them. But I think that, everyone firstly wanted Kate and Morgan. Logan talked about them in the exit today about, people wanted to like drag them through. I mean, physically they're a huge threat, but like maybe sit next to them was a big thing. And they were just this like 2-person block, which decided the majority at every turn. If they had gone with the girls, it's a very, very, very different looking boot order, and he won that over. And I think Miles did a lot, as we found out, with the idol sealer to kind of make that group as well. And he brought in poorly, but I think that AJ's had Kate and Morgan through the merge, and that has been absolutely like the way we say Kate and Morgan, it makes it sound like they're an advantage in the game. It's always together as like one word, Kate and Morgan. And that's the numbers that he built, and that was his advantage. Miles had idols, Kaylin had immunity wins, AJ had Kate and Morgan, and he continues to have Kate and Morgan. And I know that we had questions about this for everyone else. So yeah, we need to find who asked this question. For Kaylin to win, I believe he needs to get out AJ and Miles for big moves on his resume and sell his undercover story. But he's gotten rid of close allies in Cara and Logan and now Kristen. He didn't target Kate last vote as his one major challenge threat. Why? I'm going to get who asked us that question. But I think that was a big thing for me through this last episode. And what I really enjoy is that like everyone's target should be different of that final 7. I really think it's like there could be 4 different targets and only AJ got what he should want. Like I felt like AJ should want Kristen out, and he got it. Like AJ has been the least close to Kristen, I think, of that group. If anything, Kristen has seemed close to Kaylin, and he keeps Kate and Morgan, the advantage that he has. Great. I felt like AJ and Kaylin should want Kate out for this reason, especially someone like Kaylin, who we can talk about, who should maybe get to a final 5 and then want AJ out at 5, hope to win immunity. Miles, we know, has the idol. He doesn't have that. But if you want AJ out, definitely start like limiting his options and keep your own in Kristen. Like if he's at 5 with the 3 guys like Zara and Kristen, that looks a lot better than being with the 3 guys, Kate and Morgan, where again, AJ has all of the power. So I really felt like even though the stakes are lower for the guys moving into the 6 with 3 people, I still felt like you want to take the swipe at AJ by taking out a Kate, and they don't get that way. And then the girls have, but even between like the four of, I thought like Zara and Kristen should be together. I really felt like they need to take the shot at AJ. They come back to Miles and Kaylin on one side beefing with Kate and Morgan, who cannot rely on AJ anymore, rely on the girls. AJ and Miles have nothing with Kate and Morgan, have to rely on the girls, and then they can swing both ways. And then I felt Kate and Morgan, while they could never get it done, should definitely target like a Miles. And then they come back to, Zara and Kristen, who had that, like Zara's turned on AJ and Kaylin at that point, and AJ doesn't have AJ now, AJ's gone. So then they would have listen to me. AJ is there, but then they have AJ who can rely on them. He doesn't have to rely on Zara, who's just turned on him because he has Kate and Morgan. That would set up Kate and Morgan had they been able to do it, which did seem completely impossible. Well, it didn't actually, because they were looking to vote out Miles. Even Zara's like, we should vote out Miles, which is wrong for Zara. If they could have gotten to the point where they vote out Miles and gotten Zara over somehow, which we can talk about, then it would have put them in the middle. So just to set that up again, Kate, Morgan in the middle, Zara, Kristen, who've been working with them, AJ on the one side, who's now most reliant on Kate and Morgan with Kaylin. That sets them up perfectly in the middle. Like, honestly, there were 4 different targets for this 2-2-2-1, and only the one of AJ, I think, got out what he wanted. Okay, I think we got there in the end with where the target fit. Yeah.
It was an interesting vote. The final 7 was super interesting all around. I think my big takeaway was that so Zara's clearly a big swing vote in that situation, right? And so that leads me to, like, I really want to know more about really what the postgraduates think about each other in regards to what their end game plan is. I believe we're going to get a lot of that in these subsequent episodes, but it really influences the decisions that they're making at this like final 7 vote, where Zara, I would have thought what would be good for her is to rope in Kristen, who doesn't have a buddy, right?
Yes.
And that seemed like a perfect kind of like a late game. Like, we weren't working together the entire time or whatever, but let's sit next to each other. Like, let's make it official right now. That puts us in the middle, and we can take out one of these boys, and then do some type of pendulum action, and then sit together at the end. That's what I would be thinking. But Zara, I think it's clear that she's thinking really hard. I have enjoyed her this season a lot, actually. And it really comes down to what she's thinking in terms of the end game. She knows, I think she mentioned in this episode, like, she definitely doesn't have Kaylin in her end game plans, which is interesting.
Well, but if not, girls, but I don't know if that was a line. But
I forgot it was a confessional or to the girls, whatever. No, but in any case, I think she's definitely someone who has an idea of who she wants to sit next to and what the final 3, what the final 4 is going to look like. But I don't exactly know how well it's going to bode for her within the postgraduates structure.
Yes. That was, by the way, Ruth Elijah, who asked that question like 5 minutes ago. Just wanted to credit that. I do. I want to talk about Zara's position here, because I agree that she should have roped in Kristen. I think that for the guys, what you want to get to is 5 with each other and the best configuration of that 5 for you. And again, they all have their separate defenses. AJ socially, Kaylin physically, and Miles with the idol. But yeah, that's why I kind of felt like AJ won out on that. I think with the girls, what would have been the best would be to get to a 2-1-1 formation, not necessarily for a 2-1-1 vote, but to have the power at that 4. And that's why I feel like if you are, as we talked about, like if Zara and Kristen can shore it up together, then you take out a Kate next, and you take out a Kaylin, and then you get through to a 4 with like a Morgan and a Miles, and your pair, great for Zara and Kristen as this new pair. If you are Kate and Morgan, you take out like a Miles, then maybe you can look to take out like a Zara or a Kaylin, get to the end with like a Kristen and an AJ, perfect for Kate and Morgan to be in that 2-1-1 formation. But what I want to ask you, as someone who's obviously played with, to be fair, a much more tuned in cast to be fair, we've seen both in this season, but we're asking like this of someone like a Kristen. Is it possible? Because I feel like every week I come in and being like, why don't you all just combine on mutual interest? At a point for $500,000, it can't be about the people who've saved you, turned on you. Also, it's been kind of fluid in that way. Is it possible, as someone who's played the game, to be like, yeah, I feel like you were good at this. Like, this is our mutual interest. Like, the 3 of us do the thing over the top of the split. Like, because it makes sense, because we're all on the bottom. So we're all in the same spot. Is it easy to see that? And is it easy to do that when there's so much water under the bridge of, weeks in the game?
I think it comes down to the difference between the meta of US Survivor right now and the new era versus Australian Survivor.
Yeah.
With the new era, from my perspective, everyone's a fan, right? Everyone comes in sort of caught up with everything with how Survivor goes, such that there is what I would call an end game crunch. That's what I called it. But there's just like a very clear delineation when it's the final 9 or the final 8. You come back to camp and you're like, okay, this is obviously how the rest of this game is set up. These people are the threats. We need to get them out. These people are not the threats. We need to do something.
Definitely.
And so when everyone has that sort of kind of consensus, there's wiggle room because you don't exactly know what the jury's thinking, but basically there's like there's a lot of shared ground that you can all agree on in terms of what needs to happen in the end game. I think when you have that, it's easier to align on mutual interest. Whereas Australian Survivor, I think, is in a different meta completely. I think it's a lot closer to, I don't know, maybe the 30s. Maybe I don't know if this is the big moves era of Australian Survivor, but
I think the issue is that people in one cast will be in various eras. Some people haven't got into season 4 of Rocks yet, so that's what it might be. Yeah.
But I feel like I can't remember. You could correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember many confessionals or whatever of players saying, "Oh my god, that person made a big move. Like they are such a huge jury threat now. Now they have to go because like they've padded the resume." There is some resume talk, and I do think in the end game they're going to start talking about these things, but it's not as like really part of the fabric as the new era. And so with Australian Survivor, it's harder to get interest to align because people just are seeing things in different ways. They're like seeing the end game differently. And there are a lot of players who are really going off of, I would call it, grudges or vendettas, or just like, if I can't trust you because you've lied to me, then like, there's no way I'm going to work with you. I need to get you out. Like it's my mission to get you out. And when people are a little bit more all over the place, there's less shared ground and less means of really coming together and all seeing the situation in the same light.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I completely agree because this is a near impossible thing to happen in the new era. And we all, like, to be fair, scream for like some of the old school sentiments. And then people are annoyed when something like this happens, when people can march to the end. But the marching to the end on the old school values that are like, you've protected me, or these people have worked against me, so that's what I'm doing, rather than just my like, game bot like interest right now, mutual interest. I think that the one season of the new era that very much did do that, which was also frustrating, I yelled about it at the time, was that no one would take out Tika in 44. And I was like, all of you should come together to take out Tika. It's so obvious. How are they playing you all against each other? And to be fair, that's what is, happening in this season, where I feel like, that's being weaponized by the people in power who would do that if they were on the other side. Who's like thinking like, these are the threats, we should take them out? AJ and Miles, but AJ and Miles are in that spot and weaponizing that spot. So it's like we get mad at it, but it is, to be fair, especially the old school beauty of Survivor, where it's like those connections override benefit and what they should be incentivized to do. Which again, in the new era, people will complain that everyone always makes the best move. I feel like I enjoy that. It's fun. They're coming over the top of the split, but sometimes people are like, it's too game body that everyone's always thinking at that level, but then you don't get this. Now people are annoyed that people can march to the end. If a minority is marching to the end by design, and especially if we can see it, it feels like we can see it because, to be fair, they have all the edit, but it does seem clear. A majority is making a mistake by not working together or by not doing something to upend that clearly as the march to the end happens. It used to happen all the time in old school Survivor, and that's how you get pagongings. It's like, why don't people on the bottom shake that up? And that's what's happening here. So it is kind of like, I don't think people miss pagongings, especially about old school Survivor. Not that this is necessarily like a straight pagonging, but it's people who've had power the entire time. But I do think that they miss like kind of those old school values, and that's what we're seeing here. That rarely ever happens in the new era, because we definitely see in the new era, it's like, you're my best friend, but you're the threat. And people at some point, probably around the final like 8, 7, 6, start being like, you are the big threats. And I'm just going to cut you, no matter what our relationship is, because we're 25 years into this, we kind of know how it works. And they do that every single time. And they have less time to do it. They're going to a final 4, final 3, probably is a final 2 here, based on the fact that if not, we need another not-alum, which would suck. But it's probably a final 2 here, and they have so much time to do it, and people aren't, which is very old school. People don't like that part of old school. That's not what they meant. It was they kind of monkey-pawed wanting the old school values compared to, I think, like the new era game botting.
Totally. But I think what makes it really kind of satisfying and less frustrating about the Australian Survivor meta is like, okay, let's say that AJ goes on to win this game and he becomes like I don't know where you'd rank him as a winner. We could talk about that later.
Honestly,
But like
pretty
a good,
high.
like if we like, okay, say that this guy is a good dominant winner. I think what's really cool is that you could track the fact that like he picked up key relationships at the right time and he used a social game. And let's say Kate and Morgan, like he gets back on side with them and like continues to like utilize that, and that helps him go on to the win. Then it's like, okay, well, he marched the end or whatever, but he earned it through doing these things. So like these key relationships mattered, and it's really kind of satisfying because it's like, okay, if we see that he's so good at, maintaining these relationships of all different types of personalities, he picked people who would stay loyal to him. Not that, well, if that were to happen. And so it's kind of like, it's a good environment for maybe dominant social strategic wins, which is cool in its own right.
Yeah, I think AJ, like did I think that AJ, like the through line was going to be how much he would dominate this merge strategically? No, but I also don't want to just give it all to AJ. I think that the AJ, Miles, Kaylin 3 that I think have been completely empowered now, 3 of 6 of this final 6 are one of the most well-rounded alliances I have seen. The fact that they all two extremes represent that outwit, outplay, outlast, that social, well, it's hard to really like social strategy, trinket strategy, and like more from Miles to be fair, that's like kind of minimizing it, but it's fun for the analogy. And then the physical strategy for Kaylin, that's been it, like I think we'll look back at that as like that was one of the most successful. Well, we'll see how they go. If one of them wins, especially, but I think definitely one of the most comprehensive alliances I've seen.
Well, it comes down to the end game because I doubt that 3 of them want to sit next to each other. But yeah, like I have loved them. I all the way since the start, like I think I gained a rooting interest when the graduates came together the first time, and I was like, I like each of these members, and they have like broken apart and done all these chaotic things and had divergent paths. But I think that is when the season really kicked into gear because we finally started seeing like, I don't want to say first started seeing good gameplay, but it was kind of a mess at the start there. And then so I have loved Miles. I really have loved Miles a lot. I've been a big fan of his. I see similarities between myself and him. In like a lot of different ways. But I've just loved his arc, from going to be the jungle rat to the king of the rats and gaining and amassing power and like confidence has just been something that like I've loved, especially because of my Survivor 47 career, I guess. But he has done it in a much different way. Like he has found how many idols now? Like I was throwing away all the advantages that I found. So there has been differences, but I've just been really rooting for him because I identify with him a lot, and he's really kicked it into high gear. And I think that he is dangerous to sit next to in the end. And I think that's what makes these 3 guys really interesting because Kaylin. So I relate to Miles in a lot of ways, but then Kaylin as well. I feel like is doing a lot of the things that I was doing on Survivor 47, right? Where he's downplaying himself, and he has very intelligently articulated that in one of his 5 confessionals this season. There have not been many. We'll talk about the confessional count, but there is clear awareness there. That's clear. And I loved when he whispered to JLP to not, announce that he was ahead of the puzzle. I thought that was emergent gameplay. I thought that was so really good. That was really, really good. And that's just a clear example of the thought that he's putting into it. But he's in an interesting and precarious spot where he's in the end game and he's doing a lot, and he probably has a lot to say, but no one's seeing it right now. And I haven't seen all the Jury Villa stuff, but I do know that they do not currently view him in a very high light.
They said they didn't know if he could read.
That's bad, but like legitimately, some of the jury members were saying that type of thing about me when I was still in the game. And so it is a very, very tricky position. But I do want to state that like if you see people saying harsh things about him, like Kristen's saying, everyone wants to take him to the end.
Yes.
That is, you see the danger there, but you have to acknowledge that like that is his plan. So right now it is working and he is going to have to shift it. But you can't just look at people not respecting him now and saying, oh, he's dead in the water, because I do think he has a lot to say. And that was something that I was staking a lot of my win equity on, was the ability to, I said this to Rob, like I literally had Christy Bennett in my mind. I'm like, like this could be a winning path. And so I do think it's there for him, but he might be in a position. So for me, like, I always gave myself a chance to potentially win a final tribal council, but I could not sit next to Genevieve and Rachel, for example. Like, that wasn't gonna. You have no room.
Right.
You're just, your voice will not be heard at the start. And so Kaylin, whatever his endgame configuration is, I don't think he can hack it sitting next to AJ or Miles at this stage of the game.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, so many parallels, which I'm loving talking to you about. I do think maybe we look back at this final 7 and think that's where it went wrong for him, because he's pushing Kristen as a threat, but Kristen, it seemed like, was one of his allies on the outside who was maybe more aligned to him than AJ. It's very rare to find, very, very hard to give up. So we may look, he's still got a cheesy point because everyone I thought did even worse. But I think, like, in not getting his target, in the fact that even these groups together are actually smaller voting blocks who have different interests, I think that we might look back at that and think, if Kate had gone there, and if he gets to a final 5 with like a Zara and Kristen rather than like a Kate and Morgan, or some combination of that. But I think really Kristen is so necessary for him there. Kristen, who's been against AJ as much as AJ's really tried with Kristen and actually hasn't really got through to Kristen as much. And that, again, is rare and very important to keep. So I think maybe we'll look back at that, because I agree with you. If he can get to 5 and take like an AJ and Miles and sit in a better configuration. Like, the thing about a final 2 is anything's possible at a final 2. You don't rule anyone out at a final 2. I've learned it the hard way. Say someone has 0% chance to win. I've done it at a final 3, to be fair. But so I guess even at a final 3, but at a final 2 particularly, we've seen people go in who we thought really had no chance, and then the other person has a terrible final tribal council performance. It's a lot more open if you have a final 2. So if Kaylin has that possibility and also sits next to someone that we see they might not respect, Kate and Morgan, who if he can, and to be fair, he's wanting to vote out Kate and Morgan, but Kate and Morgan from a jury perspective was like the rocks thing. Kristen, to be fair, also would have had the rocks thing. Zara's put people off. So any of them, I think that's good. But then also being at 5 to get to the end with them, take out AJ at 5, take out Miles at 3 or 4, and then win through to get with, to get there with one of the women. I think it's more about having the configuration at 5. That is so important for him. But we definitely had this question from so many people, because the parallel is so clear. Lewis asked, does Kaylin need an anti-type shift in perception to have a chance to win? Can that be done at the stage? And if so, what would be his best source of action? Gabriel was asked if he should make a move to change this perception. Do you see it as just taking out AJ and Miles, and not only the fact that he wouldn't be sitting next to them, but is the fact that he then also takes them out? Does that lend so much credit to it? Like, where do you see the winning path here? Because it's so valid for you and for him to intentionally play this down. We see the benefits. You get the room to move. If people aren't looking at you as much, you have a lot more space to move. But then now it becomes tricky. And we know that it was tricky for you because you have to start making like really real shifts to give people time to like change their whole thinking about you. In the Logan jury villa, I do think they were a little bit kinder to him. Certainly in every exit interview I do, people are like, I really trusted Kaylin. Like, the clues are there if they piece it together, but will they have the time? And where do you see that for him?
Well, I think one of the things he's banking on is something that I definitely didn't have. What he has is just challenge dominance. And that is something that is in his favor. Because I think, if I were to guess of what he's thinking right now, he's like, okay, well, I'm winning like all these challenges, and I have a greater than 6.25% chance of winning the rest of the challenges, right? And he's like, but I have these allies, AJ and Miles, who, think that they have a good shot of winning a jury vote. So they're not intimidated by my challenge prowess. And on the other side, there are people who are underrating me. They're really not intimidated by my challenge prowess either. So I think a good end game strike for him is to like go along this path. Okay, sacrifice Kristen. Okay, fine. But then use the fact that he can bank on these necklaces to take out AJ and or Miles, right at the end. And then like have a very like late game deal with Zara or something. Like, let's do final 2. And maybe Zara, from his estimation, like thinks that she can beat him. So that's something that he has in his corner that I didn't have. And then if you go on to break the record for immunity challenges, I think that no matter what, especially in Australian Survivor, it gives you a platform. It gives you an in to be legitimately considered at final tribal council. And then he could lay on the fact that he was downplaying himself on purpose. Once you have, the jury's ear, then you can start making bold claims. You can't just do it without that foundation now. And so, I think he is, I think that's his kind of superpower right now. It's just the fact that he truly believes he's just going to win the rest of the challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely, like, we look at challenges. To be fair, it is a jury of fans, but I think like Paulie would care about that. So Morgan's an Olympian. Like, surely at that point, Kristen might care about something like that. And also, everyone does really like him. And I think that that's a big thing with juries, is that if they don't like you, they will never vote for you. You can't turn that around. I think that's always been my thing. If they like, you know, two people, it might be who they respect more. I don't think jurors vote for who they like more, but I do think that they don't vote for people they don't like. I think that's very rare, or they'd have to not like anyone of you. At that point, that's the best case scenario, that they don't like any of you. And then it's maybe like, who do I respect the most? But if they like one person, don't like another, they'll probably vote for the person they like. If they like even one person more than you, but they still like both of you, now I can get into respect. And people do like Kaylin, so they might be primed in that way to vote for him. And then it's about respect. And he does have so much valid things to talk about, like that, like really concrete things. It's like, here's how I can tell you I was misleading you. Like, look at the thing about JLP in the challenge, or like all of these ways where it's like, you really misjudged me and you were wrong. I just think it's hard with jurors to contend with their own wrongness in the moment, when like so much of it is about like ego and so much of it is about like their game and stuff. And it's like, again, it's the kind of thing where like clearly now the jurors in the exit interviews were like, Kaylin was doing a lot, but in the moment confronted with it, you might be like, were you? And then 2 days later, while you're in the shower having a shower thought, you're like, I'm not saying that you're necessarily thinking about Kaylin in the shower. I'm just saying that maybe you're like, he was, that does make sense, but it's too late now. So didn't vote for him to win.
But here's the thing. So we have seen, let's go to US Survivor. We have seen successful examples of perception shift in the late game. Marianne, even Gabler to a certain extent. We don't need to open up that can of worms. But like they, and again, I think this is evidence against
Gabler against lower hanging fruit compared to that's why he can't stand next to AJ and Miles. But
but this is, I think what I'm about to say is more evidence against the Mayor Ponderosa thing, because I think that it's all about influential jurors. You got to know the personality. Some jurors are more influential than others, and you have to figure out what they're going to say about you as they go into the jury. Now, this is definitely on my mind, the final six of Survivor 47, a gamble that did not pay off. But I think what I was going for is something that is very true, is if you are here in perception down here and you want to go up here, it's going to take, it's going to be slightly gradual in the sense where jurors have to come in and start laying the groundwork for that perception change, because there's always information dump. And I think while people are sitting in the jury, they're open to hearing new information as a juror comes in, right? And so what you need is a gradual incline in perception to open the door for you to have a good final tribal council performance. And so for Kaylin, I think what he has to recognize, and again, I think this plays into the strategy that I've laid out for him, is that AJ and Miles, I feel like, respect him. I could be wrong. I think that they see the inner workings of his brain. They've been working with him very closely. If AJ and Miles run out of room and they are like third and fourth place in a final two season, then they'll advocate for him. And like, I think that would help, like depending on how AJ and Miles like are perceived themselves, but I think that would help a lot, right? So a perception shift is very difficult to pull off if you want to actually win the game, but it is a path. And I think what we don't have is too many examples of someone going for this type of thing, downplaying themselves and unmasking themselves at Final Tribal Council. We don't have too many examples of someone actually reaching Final Tribal Council and getting crapped on and being rejected and being like, you're saying this, but we don't believe you. You can, I don't know, pull out some examples in Survivor history, but especially lately, we don't have the data to say that it's impossible.
Yeah, I think what is so hard is that every actually bad player and delusional player will say the same thing as a correct play, like as a correct player. It's like, no, you don't understand. I was playing. It's like, okay, you know, like, and to be fair, so would any player who's wrong about that, right? Like, no one's coming in being like, I was a bad player. Like, the bad players are coming in and saying they were good, and then people don't like that they were bad and delusional, and the good players are coming in and saying I was good, and now you have to believe that that's the one that is true. The concrete evidence is, I think, what Kaylin needs, and if he's so radically different from the perception that he's put out there, and like if he can really articulate that, like that already like completely confounds what they think of him. Like if he comes in there and it's like, here's all this intentional stuff that the Kaylin you know could never possibly verbalize to you in this moment. It's like, okay, like people have always wanted that. People always wanted Philip Shepard to come in and be like, this was all an act. Kaylin's doing that. Like that's so interesting. It's interesting to me that people are so down on it when we've asked for it for so long. And, you know, like, I mean, I think Chrissy was making up more, and I don't think it was as intentional, but yeah, she did that. And I think as well, it's so intentional. I love intentionality. I love coming in with a plan. It makes me feel like you know what rocks is, which I enjoy, you know?
Well, what you do need to separate yourself from someone who may be delusional is like, you need receipts. And
Yes.
what's great about Christy Bennett is that she was pulling out receipts that were counterfeit. But
yeah,
then, oh my God, these are the receipts. We got the receipts
exactly.
right here, which is beautiful. But yeah, so yeah, I would be very interested to see how he would fare if he then goes on to make a final two, make a final three, and pitch his case. Now, edit-wise, I'm not very optimistic, but I would just love to see it.
Yeah, I mean, well, yes, we can definitely talk about all of this stuff. And I think that what we're looking at is for Kaylin, what's the move? The move is to send out AJ and Miles to advocate for you on the jury, to not be sitting next to you, which is very important, to have it as a move, 3 for 3 on how that's important. But then we look back at 7, worse, because I feel like he did not further that opportunity by taking out an option for him and Kristen over a Kate for AJ. So I feel like now I'm looking back at that harsher, because I feel like taking out AJ and Miles is so key to his endgame. As much as he has the power here in these guys, I feel like he, more than the other two, really needs that for so many different reasons. Like, obviously AJ needs his connections to survive, but if he can get through the final two, has an argument. Miles has an idol to survive and has the argument. Like, Kaylin needs it for the argument, let alone how they all need it. You know, they all.
But if he does get to final 5 with whomever, like if he's willing to sacrifice Kristen because he's going to find himself at a final 5 with himself, Miles, AJ, and 2 others. Kaden, okay,
whatever. That's Morgan and Zara.
Okay, right. So like maybe Zara's better for this, because it's just like, I think he could bet on being like, okay, it's the final 5. Like, we need to get out Miles and AJ.
No, it's not the new era. I'm telling you, Andy. You would think so, yes. But I think not with Kaden Morgan. Not with Kaden Morgan.
With Kaden Morgan, I just don't know what their perspective is, to be honest. But but I do think even in Australian Survivor, it occurred, like, I think once literally the finale hits and you're at the final 4, I do think that's when players like, oh, I don't want to sit next to George or whatever. Like, it comes at the last second.
At the last second. I mean, but he needs 2, right? He needs 2 last seconds because he needs AJ and Miles. So I think it's a bit like, I mean, Miles might not want that. Like, Miles at that point might be like, because now we're saying like it's good for Kaylin to get out an AJ at 5 and a Miles at like a 4 or a 3. But like, if Miles knows that, then maybe he's like, I don't want to do that. And then maybe he attaches to AJ to be like, we're just going down together, because I've said, you know, better to go to the end together and advocate for both of your good stories, even in the like contentious tribal council and like how competitive that is between you, than to get picked off. If Miles can see that that's best for Kaylin, maybe he doesn't go with the Kaylin plan. Then Kaylin's completely reliant on the other 2 people that are there with the guys, which in this case is not Kristen and is at least one of Kaden Morgan, which is not in his favor. So that is, I think, where the so much of this is the emphasis in different groups. When you're in a group, the guys and their other side options, which I think AJ has won in, even AJ and Miles and the way they were winning. And then it was like AJ, Kaden Morgan, and the other side things they had, which again, AJ has won in every single one of these, because then he has like Miles and Kaylin on the side of Kaden Morgan. For Kaden Morgan and what could have been Zara and Kristen, it was about AJ or Miles. So much better for Kaden Morgan to take out a Miles and keep AJ as an option reliant on them. So much better for Zara and Kristen to take out an AJ and keep the girls reliant on them, because they don't have AJ to rely on. Like, I find all of this so interesting, and is maybe why it's hard to come to a decision. Like, we see a lot of like needing to compromise, because Miles wanted Karen, you know, AJ wanted Kaden Morgan, like, and then they compromise on a Logan. Like, I think that's been an underrated part of the season, is trying to manage all your side options when you are in kind of these relationships. But looking at that, then how do we look at Zara's decision? Because she's obviously the swing vote here at the 7. And like, even taking out the fact that like Kristen clearly hasn't brought like a 2-person plan to her. I mean, obviously, just even looking at the 3 sides that she says is a, you know, lateral move, moving from the bottom of a 3 to a bottom of a 3. But now we're looking and saying the girls are strong physically and a 3, and the guys are strong at final tribal council and a 3. Like, do we think that like AJ and Miles have the best shot, especially after watching the jury villa? And Kaylin, if he gets them out, has the best shot. So even if so then do I look at like harsher at Zara's decision not even to flip over to another 3, let alone the pair with Kristen, which would have been the winning move? But even without that, do I look at that harsher? Because if she's going down with this 4, is there a winning game for her? Is that the 0% chance that we talk about? Because who is she beating of those 4? Whereas like if you sit next to like, I don't know, we don't know enough, but like a Morgan or a Kate or a Kristen, at least you knew what rocks was. Like, maybe there's something there actually.
So I do think for Zara, I do think that she should have swung over for
just flipped to the 3.
final 7 round. Yeah, bringing Kristen, that's a really important part of it.
That's a big part.
But I think given that, I think it would have definitely boded well for her. But again, she probably has a similar but contradictory idea as Kaylin, because what Zara, I think she had a confessional saying that she feels very confident in endurance challenges, right? And I think this is a known and established endgame strategy of take George, take, the strategist, and you beat them at the very final immunity challenge, and then you get credit for it. And so I think Zara might be eyeing that. And she probably looks at Miles and AJ as shields from final 7. But of course, time is absolutely running out, and you lose leverage by the round. So I disagree with her decision at the final 7, but I do think that she definitely has a plan. And well, this is kind of a little bit tangential, but my hot take is that Zara, I don't know what her confessional count is, but her edit is viable, in my opinion.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah. I mean, she's the last coven member standing. You think she would have gotten more given that, given she has the least of the coven and is the last coven member standing.
But I think confessional count is not equivalent to your edit. I think that my perception of Zara is that we always check in with her and we see what she's thinking. And unfortunately for Australian Survivor, I do think she fits an archetype that could be buried by the edit.
As a winner? Yeah.
Just like in general, like when I think of people who've got like 0 confessionals, it's kind of like women in that archetype. You know what I mean? But she does not have many confessionals, I don't think, but she has some type of through line where Miles and AJ are definitely like taking up all of the airtime, but I do think with Australian Survivor, like they just pick their favorites. Like they pick the people who are giving them the best confessionals. And I think even if like Nash was still in the game and he was on track to be like a 0 vote finalist, like he would have the most confessionals.
That is true. Yeah. It's not really the quantity of like her confessionals or even like the through line that I do agree we've like kind of known for a long time, like who Zara is and kind of where she sits. I don't know. She was kind of at the bottom of this majority, but she also just like, I think was, with Cara, and I think like not having power. If anything, that's been spoken up wrongly to us as like, we had so much power and that's why Karen was targeted, and like I don't even agree. So if anything, I think that's been like overestimated. For me, it's 2 things. It's firstly, it has, from an edit perspective, I think been quite negative. I feel like that, like we see this with like Caroline as well. Like those like cut to her to like probably at her worst. And like to be fair, we've also seen it. We've talked about this. Like we've seen her do the wrong thing socially. We've seen her like come at Miles. We've seen her say to Max like, "I'll come kill you." We don't endorse. But I think that it's that kind of almost negative edit. Like when have we really seen like the positives, like the story? Like we get that from AJ and Miles. Like we get a lot of like cocky AJ content, but like also we get them like at their prime and like what they want to be. Like, is this the edit that Zara wants? I think probably not. And even like a smaller winner edit is probably a little bit more positive, you would think, even in this archetype.
You might think so, and I always kind of go in loops with doing edit stuff because I go back to the fact that like, so with Australian Survivor, I think they're kind of on a run where the winner has lended themselves to a big edit. Ferris, of course, right? And then Liz was an interesting character and she was doing things, but also she had very close proximity to all the legends who were on that season, right? And then Haley, oh my God, Haley Leak. I actually tuned out of Blood vs. Water. I'm going to be honest, but I don't think I watched the last 8 episodes of that, but I think he got a big edit as well, right? And then of course Haley Leak, and then we can go back to the beginning. But
I know Haley got a lot as she deserved, and the audience was still like, she didn't do anything, and I was like, I'm dying slowly. Yeah.
You can give me insight as like an example of an Australian Survivor. They ended up having a winner, which is out of their control. They ended up having a winner where they're like, oh, that wasn't our favorite. Like
probably Christy, probably Liz, to be honest. I think that because Liz isn't George. Honestly, probably Haley. Anyone who's not George is probably the one. Even Pia, it's like, why aren't you Luke?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but even like Pia, who is not necessarily. I mean, I think they like Pia, but Pia is like more under the radar than they would probably want. Like they really did cram that down our throats in a positive way.
Yeah. So from my perspective, so on Survivor 47, I feel like the edit was very true to the experience, kind of on all fronts. Now that's my perspective. Other people on the cast could definitely have different opinions. But like, so that was my personal experience. And I do feel like there's only so much you could do to paint certain pictures. And I'm not saying this is because Zara like wasn't nice or pleasant out there, but maybe that was the content that she was giving them on date 15 or whatever. And maybe just based off of how she moved throughout the game, if she were to go on to win, which she's not my winner pick, but just like in this example, like maybe that is the first time where they had a winner where they didn't have enough to like make a meal out of.
Yeah.
But, or AJ could win, and then once again they're like Yahtzee, like yeah, great.
Yeah, like no, I think it's interesting. I'm higher on the edit chance than I am on just her position. I think that's worse for me because I feel like here, I mean, like yeah, again, if she comes together with Kristen here, which might have been complete, like Kristen might be immovable there. Like maybe you can't trust that Kristen will do that, which is honestly upsetting because I feel like Tony did this with Wu and Rob did it with Mateo in 2003. Like I feel like you need a second person to like hopefully move around. That's a perfect position for a Zara to have like a passive player coming with you, but maybe Kristen is that immovable that she's not doing that. But without the Kristen plan that I made up, that we talked about, that is obviously fan fiction, and it's just flipping from 1-3 to the other, both are really bad moves. I think that's why I struggled with like, what should she do? And I was like, yeah, you don't want to flip from 1-3 to the other. But then it's like, but can you beat anyone in your 3 in the 3 of the guys? It's like, you don't want to do that. Like, so you want to go to the other 3. It's like, then you're at the bottom of a really physical 3 when her one thing is like winning out, as you said, like the strategy of winning out and taking out people. But to be fair, there was one George. She needs to take out all the guys. And also if she's going to the end with the guys, she can't take them out because they're there with her.
Well, the thing we haven't really talked through fully is like what AJ and Miles want to do. Who do they want to sit next to? Because maybe Zara is looking at the 3 boys and being like, this is an implosion, like we need to happen in the end game and I can capitalize on it. And so we could talk through that because, if you're someone like AJ, someone in that position might feel like they could sit next to anyone, right? But knowing the both of them, I think that they have their own, because we talk about the level of gameplay this season. I don't know. I feel like this endgame is at least full of a few players who are switched on and they do have their own agenda going into the end, right? So I don't know who AJ and Miles want to sit next to. I think probably they don't want to sit next to each other. That's my guess. I could be wrong. But the problem is if the Zaras and the Kaylins are sacrificing Kristen and not making that move now, as you get to the end game, I think that Miles and AJ will look at each other in some point and be like, we're like we said, like Miles said,
we're crazy
psychopaths. We're the two biggest psychopaths here. Like, I think the other players are maybe making a mistake in tempting them to sit next to each other just for the sake of it. But
I can picture that.
Yeah.
But now that you've said it, I did the same way. They're like, we'll go to rocks. We're so freaking mad that I think that they could be like, we're just going to sit next to each other. Who knows what will. I see it. I definitely see it. And who would want to be relying on that not happening? Who would want to be relying on Miles and AJ doing something that may be in their best interest when they're Miles and AJ? They've told you who they are in no uncertain terms.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see. I think one thing to track for sure is I think AJ has very strong opinions about Miles' idol. And I think he wants to ensure that it is not a successful idol play. That would be my sort of guess on that. Because there could be some, and like if they look at themselves as like a Dom and Wendell, like obviously I think that their inclination will be to, if not get them out during the end game, at least kind of undercut each other so that they have each of them has a shot to win.
Yeah. But the thing is that undercutting Miles is actually not voting for him because giving him the chance to save himself, or he saved poorly, but save the person going home, largely himself, 4 times is probably not what AJ wants. So actually the thing you do is like, you didn't even need the 4th idol, which isn't a great argument in and of itself. But yeah, I think targeting him, maybe like you can't do that because you can't give him the opportunity to add to that ridiculous record. So I think that, again, for someone like Zara, it's hard because you are in the hands of these 2 people who might do the crazy thing and want to go to the end together. There are also 2 people who might be like actually like benefit from going to the end together because it's so easy to cut the other one of them. I mean, at the final 3, maybe they cut each other, but like you as Zara in the final 3 with them are more likely to win a challenge anyway. But it's like, okay, maybe they would cut each other at the final 3, but cutting each other earlier becomes the issue that they just get picked off. So actually it's not just that they might be crazy. They might be, again, benefit to taking it down that far to just get to the end together, even if that's just like a final 3 challenge, not even necessarily final tribal council. I'm doing a lot of this with the assumption that it's a final 2 because I don't think they'd want to introduce another non-elim right now. So that's my kind of assumption. But yeah, if they were to do that, I think there would also be actually some merit, some strategic merit in going to the end together. So you're up against the craziness. You're up against the fact that they actually might be incentivized to do it. And you're up against, I think, the third thing, which is like, if they are going to the end with you, it's because you're the GOAT. Like for Zara, it's like, that's how you're getting to the end with them. It's that they want to blow up each other because they're bigger threats compared to you, but then who wants to be the GOAT? So then I'm like, at that point, why be at the bottom of a 4? Like if we're looking at it like Zara's at the bottom of both 4s and she's making a lateral move, it becomes, I actually think it is more likely to get to the end, as crazy as Miles and AJ might be, and as much as they might benefit from taking each other far in the game. And you have a better physical chance getting to the end with them, and they might want to take you in further. But I think that's because they can beat you. So then I'm like, flip to the women, who, to be fair, are a block who could definitely vote you out, are definitely bigger physical competitors, but are better to sit next to at the end. And you do need a chance to win at the end. So then I'm like, flip. And then I'm like, no, but wait, it's a final 2. And I just said anyone at the final 2 can implode. God only knows if they hate AJ or think not, Miles is still the jungle rat. And so you are relying on that in a final 2 compared to a final 3. Okay, so now go with the guys and hope you get to the end and tell your story. At least you're in that seat, and anything can happen at the final 2. And I'm really, really between it. I think both arguments are fine. And the reason both arguments are fine are because both arguments are bad. I really hate both of those spots for her. I love the Kristen thing of flipping back and forth, but that's what I think that's where my brother and I often talk about this. Like sometimes you go back and forth on these decisions that are marginal because they're both really good or both really bad. It's rare, although not that rare in the season, that people have game losing or winning moves. I thought that like Kristen and Logan taking out Karen, game winning or losing. I thought Kristen, to be fair, going on rocks, I still thought was like 2 bad positions. Here with Zara, I think Zara has a chance with Kristen, and that actually is something really powerful. But if it's just flipping from one to the other, like, yeah, I can go back and forth all day talking about the cons of 2 bad moves. And I think that's where I sit with it. Like, I'm not passionate either way because it's just not a good spot either way.
No, it's really tough. And then as you lay out these scenarios, it's like, and then of course, this is natural, but there are things we don't see. Like, I don't know, like we see Miles and AJ having a billion confessionals, but like, are they viewed as unbeatable in the end? I don't know. Maybe Zara thinks that Miles is beatable at the end, for example. That's one thing. And then also, as much as I agree with you and like this idea that Zara should have teamed up with Kristen and done a pendulum thing, like I can't off the top of my head even remember the nature of their relationship. Like,
I don't think they have any relationship.
Right. Like, I just don't think there's.
Who cares?
I know.
People in the new era.
If there's no trust there or whatever, it takes being in the new era state of mind to be like, okay, well, now we're working together.
Like, it was like, because it's logical for both. The trust is like, why would we go to the end with Kate and Morgan as a 4? Why would we go to the end with the guys? Like, surely the trust is the logic of clear, real, evident, mutual benefit. Am I losing my mind? Am I simplifying Survivor? Does it not exist? It exists in the US, not here.
Survivor's beautiful because it's got all these layers. Like, there's like, you could look at it extremely logically, like computationally, right? But that's not the whole pie. Like, there's like all this other stuff. Sometimes you might get bitten by a wasp, and then then you don't have time to like come up with a new game plan. Like, that is Survivor. You're out there in the jungle for a reason.
I want it to be the pie, but you are so right. I come here and I'm like, why don't they do this thing? It's like they don't know what rocks is and they got stung by a wasp. There's so much going on. There's so many things I can't control even in my analysis. So yeah, I mean, I'm really enjoying this discussion. I want to get into the confessional charts. I wondered if there's anything else from this week. Something I had for you. I know that there was a lot of kind of thoughts about this. Nick Callahan gives us a social media every week. What did you think about the challenge, the group challenge? I know I quite liked it, but I thought I think people were kind of upset about like, oh no, now Logan doesn't have her chance to win the challenge. Like, is that something all the players should be afforded, or is this fun because AJ has to sacrifice its own immunity to take away immunity? Definitely interesting decisions, but for sure it takes away what should be like a God-given right, technically a producer-given right on this show, individual immunity.
I mean, in the moment, I just enjoyed it because like that's AJ throwing another challenge or involved with a challenge throw, and it was just like was funny and it was like interesting. But I do agree with what you're saying. I think this happens more in Big Brother, where like there are some like HOH or veto competitions where like the underdog has no chance of winning because there's a social strategic component to it, and the fate is not just in their hands to go out and win it. And then you're just like, okay, well then they just don't have a chance of upending the power structure. So this is like a much smaller version of this. So I can definitely see, I could see the criticisms. I didn't think too deeply about it. I was just like, ha ha ha, AJ threw that.
Yeah.
That was funny.
Well, I think my favorite challenge is like touchy subjects. Like we've seen the chop challenge. Like we have had in the past social components to challenges, which to be fair does rob the underdog of their immunity chance, which you would think producers wouldn't like. I love it from a production standpoint because I love, firstly,
it's a trade-off.
I love the decisions, and I do love rewarding like thinking outside the box. And I also do love rewarding, to be fair, social strategy, which should only behoove, to be fair, the majority who are doing that well, which is not what you would think producers would want. I like that. You would think that they want the underdog to like get their win. For me, that's not my value system. So I do think now that I'm thinking about it, and we do have we have had social strategic challenges in the past. Like, I don't know that people should be so mad at it.
It's just interesting, but it's something that you have to account for if you're playing. Like, I don't know if you asked Logan, like, is Logan like particularly upset about that, or?
I didn't have time. There was I'm hoping to get the deep dive with Logan because I didn't even get to be like back enough. I'm like, just tell me about rocks, tell me about like turning on Kara, and then I felt like time is running out. So we didn't have that. That is a good question for her. But yeah, I mean, you could say then that like Logan has done things wrong in the game to get to the point where AJ would care enough to like sacrifice again in his crazy AJ way, but like sacrifice his own immunity challenge, like prospects to doom her. But then you would be like, but that shouldn't matter. She should still be able to physically come over the top of any social deficit. And I'm sure people who care more about challenges would. And I honestly do see that side, but I'm like less and less mad. I was never mad at it. And I'm like even more pro it the more I talk about it.
Right. I mean, you and I agree. We just like to see the social strategy component of it at play. And to me, I found that to be interesting. So but I see both sides.
Did you have more you want to talk about? Should we get into the confessional charts? We can talk about it through the confessional and Chizzy charts.
Yeah, let's talk about confessionals. I just find this interesting. I want to see the numbers.
The numbers are crazy. And of course, thank you to Carl Dart for the charts. It's quite small, so I'm going to lean in now and talk. Okay, so AJ on 77%. 77 confessionals, almost 77%. 77 confessionals. Miles on 62. Then we do drop to Zara at 28. Then Kaylin at 22. Kate 28. At 18. Yeah, and we have Morgan at 7. So again, we see here that Zen has more confessionals than Morgan. Kent has more confessionals, and the aforementioned Ali more confessionals than Morgan. Nash with 24 confessionals, who went out in episode 4, has more confessionals than half the cast, and honestly almost 4 of the 6 that are still remaining. And Morgan has had 2 confessionals since episode 4, which I honestly wonder, from the Survivor fact checker, I wonder if that's some sort of record in terms of like a 16 episode low. Yeah, that's very few confessionals.
This is wild. Yeah. I'm of a few minds about this. I think that generally speaking, it does make it richer, more complex, and satisfying if there is a little bit more parity with the confessionals in this. I do, however, I guess we have to accept that this is the Australian Survivor way. And I do think that this is the same discussion as rocks. Like, you don't have to be a super fan going into Australian Survivor. But I think what you do have to understand, if you do a little bit of research, is that in Australian Survivor, you have to earn your screen time. Now, if you care about that, because I think one of my favorite exit interviews you did was with David Zacharias or
Zaharakis. He's a very big football player. Yeah.
Right. And I don't watch, is it Australian rules football?
Yeah.
I don't watch that. But I think it was you did an exit interview with him, and you're like, are you upset you didn't get more screen time? And he's like, I'm a professional athlete. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, that's not what I'm here for. I just wanted to play Survivor. And I thought that was an incredible answer, because it's just like, it depends on what you want. And I respect people having their own sort of priorities, or like what they want out of the Survivor experience. And I just love that. That was super refreshing. But if you do want screen time, I think you have to go into Australian Survivor understanding that you got to earn it. You got to earn it. So it's unfortunate. I wouldn't want it to be this uneven. I think that honestly, I think the new era has a great balance.
Yeah.
Now, I did get a lot of confessionals. I'm not trying to be biased. I'm just saying that there's more parity. There is more parity, and in the new era, they look at all 18 people that they put on the show, and they're like, we want them to like be seen in some light. So that is preferable, but at the same time, like, I'm an AJ and Miles fan. They did a lot out there. They did, like, they earn their screen time.
Yeah. And look, we know the confessional charts aren't everything in Australian Survivor. A lot of it is like what you're doing in the game, in camp, on the mat, and at challenges, confessional time. And I honestly think those things would only make the disparity greater between AJ and Miles. I honestly think the confessional charts might be kind to like a Zara having, 28 to Miles' 62. Does it feel like we've seen like pretty much half of Zara than Miles? Like, I don't agree with that. So I actually think it would make it greater. I do like, fine. If someone doesn't want confessionals, again, like fine for them. Like everyone has different things they want in life. I think producers should probably cast people who want to like make good TV and have screen time. I think that if we had that from everyone and everyone was competing on it, it might get a little bit insufferable, but probably would be for the best. Also, naturally entertaining people, a good thing to cast. Like, I think that they get into this unfortunate spot where like they do like cast a lot of the like professional athletes that are like important to every freaking theme that we do. They're heroes, and they're also I mean we've had some good athletes, to be fair, but like, I think a lot of the time like the hero, brawny, championy athletes, and we have had good ones, but some of them, like I watch Australian rules football. I've seen many post-match conferences which are like, you had a like devastating, like historically bad loss this episode. How do you feel about that? And like the captains and the coaches and all of these former athletes are like, well, we put in our best 4 quarters. Like they fenced it. That's how they're media trained, I think, to be just like super neutral. It's not good content in the interviews. Like it's kind of rare, I think, to get a sport like an athlete who's like, this is devastating to me.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna go home and cry right now and like eat a bucket of ice cream. Like, and I think that maybe that's not the best thing. We've seen a lot of like 7th placed athletes who ironically got saved by a twist and came back around, like the Simon Blacks of the world, or Commando Steve in that archetype. And I think that's probably not for the best. And like, I don't know enough about Morgan, and I think 7 confessionals is crazy. But like, if that was the casting, I don't know what she's giving. I clearly have seen her twice since episode 4. We think she and Kate have been the key to the merge, but like, I think that they saw an Olympian. I don't know if she was entertaining, but like if that's the choice that they made and it was valid, then like, I don't know, that maybe you don't cast someone who's going to give you 2 good confessionals since episode 4 if that's what it was.
Yeah, but casting, like, I mean, both US, Australian Survivor, I'm sure they put so much like investment into it, thought into it, but it's kind of like there's an unknown to it. Like, I don't know how much in the casting process, I don't know how much Kirby would have differentiated herself from some of these people who, like, they kind of have similar vibes, and yet Kirby was a home run, of course, right? So they probably
Kirby's
just kind of
exactly.
So they probably just they stack it. They like swing for the fences, and they know that they have 24 people on a season, and they're gonna pick their favorites, and those 7, even less, maybe 5 people or so are gonna like kind of carry the confessional part of it. So I understand that. I think everything would be more. It would be a more satisfying experience to like the super fans who are following all this if we had this baseline level of understanding of the games that people were playing. Like 7 is, that's
historically interesting, statistically fascinating. I think at the very least, like it's a moment in time. I think as well, like when you put it down to luck, it's like some people are going to carry. It's like, what if those people do badly? That's the one issue, and that's what's happened here. Where like, to be fair, AJ and Miles have carried, and then like all of the first jurors were interesting, but they're on the jury. Like, if they do better than some of the people who have been buried, then this is a fascinating endgame of like big characters.
But they were hyped up on Max and Rich and Kent and Nash, I'm sure. Like they had a lot of big personalities in there, and a lot of them did not go super far.
It comes down to boot order when you are like betting on some, even if it's
Justice for Noonan. She got screen time. I love.
She got a lot of screen time. She has 28 confessionals, again, equal to Zara. So as much or more than 66% of the remaining final 6 cast. So that's where we're at with that. Let's look at the percentages, by the way. AJ 13.53% of all confessionals, and Miles 10.9%. About a quarter of all confessionals given to AJ and Miles. And maybe that was the better product.
What was Russell Hance's share in Samoa?
Yeah, that especially individually. Can we get these? I want these stats from the fact checker, and people hated that. People wanted Samoa to be recut, and I think they did it. Chili chart also sewn up by AJ and Miles, who now, where am I? The top of the chili charts: Miles on 37, AJ on 33, Karen left on 27, and Kaylin's now on 26. Only the guys got points this week through their dominance of sewing up this endgame, where they're now 3 of the final 6. and then Logan left on 24 and Kate's on 20, and that's kind of where we're at. Morgan on 6, so she's in a very interesting position of will she get more Chizzy points or Confessional, 6 and 7 currently, and Zara is on 8 Chizzy points. How do you see, have you have any, like, have I been really wrong about some of the Chizzy points? Because sometimes people want to come in on the feedback show.
Well, here's the question we all want to ask is, how are we going to rig it for Miles and AJ to have a tie at the end, and they both get the that's
should
how.
I do it?
Yeah.
I kind of only do it once.
You've done it before.
For the people who don't know this is one of my favorite things of all time, and I think really speaks to the difference between Australian Survivor and US New Era Survivor based on the level of fandom. Now, again, 3 of the final 8 here don't know what Rox is. Many of the final 8 in your season are actively tracking the Chizzy to the point where after I rigged the Chizzy, AJ sent me a screenshot about the week before a conversation he had with Rachel where he said, oh, it's going to be a tie in the Chizzy. And then Rachel was like, no, but won't Sam win? And then Andy said, I bet Shannon rigs it so that you, Genevieve, and Sam win. And the fact that they, are tracking it so much, but also know me well enough to then know that I would do. How did you know me so well to know that I would do that?
Is exactly what I told you. It's like, this parasocial thing is crazy because it kind of goes both ways now. But my parasocial friendship with you goes back to 2016 or whatever. Whenever you started. So I know you. I don't know. I knew that was going to happen. I was not surprised. But it's also because it felt right that those 3 would.
Felt right. Thank you so much. Right. I agree with you. So, okay, a couple of things here. Firstly, I have people in my life that I've been friends with since I was a child, and I would go to them and be like, I rigged the Chizzy, and they'd be like, what the Chizzy? And I'd be like, Andy knows me better than you do. Do you understand what's going on? Yeah, he predicted.
That's like saying going to rocks out of context. They're like, what are these words? What are these words?
My favorite moment. Imagine saying, I want to do that I'm talking to Kristen in a couple of hours. Do you think I should be like, are you happy with the Chizzy points? Where did Kristen leave? Kristen had... Where's Kristen?
But if you're on reality TV and you're on the show, like I think not anyone.
No, I don't think
okay.
So.
I would have thought that they would start tracking this.
Do you think David Zaharakas knew how many Chizzy points he had? Do you think Morgan is watching this?
Maybe not.
Yeah, not every.
From my experience, even if you're not a super fan, people start getting really fixated on the Fishy all of a sudden. They're like, oh, who's winning the Fishy? But anyway,
it's easy to understand. There aren't charts in the Fishy. Look at this. We have a whole thing happening here. It's color coded. Randy Newport does the charts every week. So I have a fact checker. We have different charts happening every week for the Chizzy. It's very mathematical and it can be rigged. Should I rig 2 seasons in a row? It's a very interesting question. I like it. It does.
No half measures. No, but I will say, what's great about the Chizzy is that you are tracking things on an episode to episode basis. So that should kind of justify itself, and you don't really need to overthink it because. If someone's doing things that we can say are good without hindsight, like in the moment, then they deserve Chizzies, even if their game blows up the next week or whatever, because at least they got Chizzy points when they were flying close to the sun. 100%. And so this feels right. This is good.
Give Karen 3 points. She was out 22 hours later, like that. And that's the episodic Chizzy, which we enjoy. I do think had I not rigged your Chizzy, the odds of me rigging this Chizzy would be quite high. Doing it 2 seasons in a row, it's going to become a thing that people are like, what's the point in the Chizzy if you rig it every season? I also think Rob will be like, how much money are we spending on mugs every 6 months? A valid question. I don't know that I think I can't rig 2 Chizzies in a row. I don't think I'm going to be rigging the Chizzy.
Fair enough. But like, okay, without contradicting myself, like if I were on this on a week to week, AJ would have a million Chizzies because like he's playing a very Chizzy game from my estimation. But I know that a lot of these moves are controversial. But that was just
It's hard because it's like Mars should have gotten more for the PD vote. Now he got 0, and I'm higher on the move when he found out all the information. Terrible edit, to be fair. Really, really hard to analyze a lot of things we didn't know. But yeah, looking at the through line, it's like AJ should have been getting 3 points like every single episode, pretty much. Like every episode for shoring up just like insane power.
But it's like, I guess that's because the moves didn't come off as super like successful in the moment, which so like I think Taryn has this problem on the stock watch where it's like you can look back and say like this person should have had 10s this week, 10, but we didn't know it at the time because like it was more unknown, and so you look back and maybe their stock watch career was deflated, but that's just the nature of it. I mean, that's part of the fun, I think.
even more impressive though that it's hidden. Like that's you get more points for the fact that even I can't tell. And then I look back, I'm like, oh, you controlled the entire merge and no one knew. People were saying, do Kaden Morgan think you're close? No, he won Kaden Morgan. Like that level of hiding it to both. Like the audience would be nice if we knew, but I guess it would just feel so sewn up. But like, yeah. I mean,
what do you think happens with Kaden Morgan?
What do you mean?
Like
in life?
I mean, they're not getting not in life. I wish them the best in life.
Yeah, Morgan's having twins. So.
That's amazing. Congrats, Morgan.
Yeah.
But like
that's literally she's having like pretty much as many babies as she has confessionals.
Yeah. I mean, if I were to guess, I would think that maybe they're perceived as not being jury threats, right? But is this in your opinion, losing finalist edits for either of them, or they get unceremoniously like kind of clipped in the end?
I think they're gonna get clipped.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is if it's a steamroll to the end, I think like clip might be the way that it goes before we get to the end, is what I would imagine.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But like we look at like if you look at like, you know, and why AJ should be getting points, because every week we're like, why are they taking the shot at AJ? And every week that they don't should be a credit to him. Every episode, you know, like you spoke about this before, like in terms of Kristen's plan on, you know, Karen or Zara. It's like you mentioned half measures, like. This whole season has been the season of half measures. The full measure has always been taking the shot truly at AJ, and it's just never been done. It's like, how can I like get my like maybe even not, but like how can I attempt to half get this one ally who's still not? I'm still not taking a shot at the power structure, and what a credit to the power structure, as we see here in these riggable chizzy charts.
But I mean, it is kind of beautiful because we laid out pretty much everyone left. We laid out what they might be thinking in the end game, and none of it involves targeting AJ anytime soon.
What are Kaden Morgan thinking? What's their pathway? Well, they lost the vote. So I guess their pathway was pulling over Zara with like no real argument, even though the argument we've said there might be argument there. The argument that you can't beat any of the guys at the end. That's like where I'm between it for Zara on the, you know, you can't beat any of the guys at the end, and they might take each other because they're crazy. And also because if they don't, it benefits them. Like I actually gave the argument today in saying that there's some whatever, like it's both a bad spot, but like there's
this reminds me of another point actually, because with Kaden Morgan, I think from what I can gather, like they are starting to, like they've realized they've woken up a little bit and they're kind of fed up with AJ of it all, but they've lost their leverage. Like they haven't timed their awakening correctly, and so it's put them on the outs. But what I wanted to say was that again, I'm just an AJ apologist, but I liked his idea to like do that.
AJ badly.
To do that to do the fancy split vote. I think that added up. I think that kind of broke down because they got a little bit confused by it. But like AJ, like, you know, his butt was kind of on the line, right? So he was at least incentivized to pitch a split. And I think the other thing there is, despite Kaden Morgan being a little bit off of him, if the postgraduates agreed to do this fancy split thing, the good thing for AJ is that he would be the one to go over and broker it with them. And so he could spin it however he wanted. And so I think that was definitely in his head to get the postgraduates to agree on the split so that he could go over to Kaden Morgan, and despite it not actually being in their favor at all or whatever, like he would massage it to be like, this is me letting you in. And so I saw the thought process there. And also, and numerically, I don't know what you could do with a 4 strong that you can't do with a 3-1. In any case, you're trusting Zara. So Zara could screw it up no matter what you do.
Right. That's true. But yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily like, again, a 3-1, that you're splitting your 4 on is fine as long as you have the 3. It's more just like, how do you spin that to Kaden Morgan? How do you go to them and be like, hey, we're gonna tell me, how do you do that?
You could be like, you have to massage the truth, but you can go over to them and be like, hey, these 3, they're voting for you no matter what. These 3 are voting for you. They won't listen to reason, but I will vote with you, me, you, and you 2. Now we vote Kristen. And once we get to a deadlock, then
they're like, what happens on the deadlock? Oh my God.
They don't even know. So AJ can build the world around them however he sees fit. And I think it would have worked because they were really, and I rewatched that scene, like they were just fed up because he did what he did not do well was how he actually approached them. And he was basically like winking to them, like hint, like.
He really was, yeah.
But that's a half measure. Like if you're gonna say it, if you're gonna say it, you should say it.
So much half measures.
So I think it's just all about, I think if he had that ammo that we're gonna tell Kate and Morgan to do something. He was gonna go over and I think he was gonna massage it and spin it right for him, and that would have been a 3 chizzier for me right there if they had all agreed to it.
To be fair, though, okay, it's about how he can sell it to them, and to sell it to them, he's going to have to say, "We won't vote you out on the revote," and if they want to do that, they can. So you can't just be like, they want to vote for you. It has to be like, but we won't put you out on the revote, which again makes them hostages. Now, I do worry about the inclination that AJ might have to be like, you're our hostages. You know, like I've seen it on the mat. So my concern is that maybe he doesn't sell it well of like, you do what we say or you're getting cut. That's just simply what the plan was.
But he has a way with Kate and Morgan. It didn't work because he had nothing to give them, but he usually does, right? So maybe he could say that, okay, the 3 of them, they're definitely gonna write your name down, but if we bring it to a tie and we are ensuring that Kristen is vulnerable and she doesn't have an idol, because is she the one that they're worried about having an idol? I don't even remember. But like if it's crystal clear that Kristen is
they are at the point where they're not splitting, and that's his concern. And she's
he could say the 3 of them want to vote you out because they think Kristen is an idol. But if me and the 2 of you vote Kristen, bring it to a tie, now it's clear that Kristen is now vulnerable, and then we can get Kristen out on the revote. That's something. I mean, is this fan fiction? Perhaps.
No, it's better than what I thought he might say, which is again, you are my hostage, do as I say, which is what I've seen. I mean,
Well, the AJ apologist hat. I don't think, if I'm remembering correctly, he never walked up to someone and went like, "You're my hostages."
No, he wasn't that. He said to Paulie, "You're in on it."
He said, "Paulie and Noonan, we're gonna do some theater and we're gonna save your butts, and I'm gonna call you a hostage, but I'm with you. I'm trying to save this. I'm doing it to save you." And then he goes on the mat and then has the whole theatrical moment.
Yeah. So. You have brought me somewhat across in that the first thing being how he could sell it of like, I'm saving you, which to be fair, we also did feel he could do once he just votes out Kristen, knowing that Miles has the idol to come back and be like, I protected you, which is true. And that I actually think is Kate and Morgan's path is relying on AJ as so many are, being like, I hope AJ chooses me. I hope that I get the final rose from AJ in this. So I can keep going forward with him and, I don't know, at a point start winning challenges. But I think that, okay, fine, on the argument that you're saving them, but mostly on the fact that nothing AJ has done socially that I've seen really with Kate and Morgan should work. Now, to be fair, no, I'm kind of joking. He has done things where he's been like trying to make them comfortable and stuff. But like, all of the flirting and stuff has been terrible, but it worked. So maybe this would work. Maybe this is better than a lot of what I've seen, and maybe I just underestimate AJ's insane pool. I mean, I'd hate to see him out at the bar. Like, what is he?
There are some levels of Riz that just don't translate on screen.
Clearly. And I like AJ, but I don't get how that worked with Kate.
Like, this is with all love, but Gabe in real life has got a lot of Riz, but it did not translate on screen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disagreeing. I'm not just a drive-by on Kate. I don't mean to be so emphatic in that. I
point being, in real life, he does. That's my point.
Yeah, and AJ, we've heard that in X interviews. I think that if you'd gone back, and I like AJ, but I'm just saying that like, had you gone back to the merge, and I go back into the past, and I tell a version of myself like, you know, that interaction between AJ and Kate, that's going to decide this whole post-merge. I think I'd be like, I don't believe you, Shannon, from 3 weeks from now. Like, you're just simply lying. And it's crazy, but it did. Insane. I've really loved talking about this with you, Addy. I don't want to stop, but then it's like the podcast is coming to an end. Did you have any more thoughts you wanted to give? Do you have any more things you want to convince me to at the last minute here with the AJ plan that you're defending well, I think?
I'm loving this. I'm having so much fun. There is apparently like a giant thunderstorm, so hopefully I don't lose Wi-Fi. But
oh my god!
In any case, no, I'm really loving this season, and it's just going to be these next 2 weeks are going to be really fascinating with how these end games shake out. I don't know who I would bet to win.
Yes, give me a winner pick right now.
I think you have to look at the edit first. So I would say AJ. I'd put him in the pole position.
Put AJ above Miles.
Yeah. It's a good question. That's what my gut is saying. Although I did want to take a moment to say I did not give Miles enough love on this podcast. I have been loving everything he's doing. Yes. And I'm so glad he found all these idols. And I think it is so cool. The King of the Rats arc was super immaculate. And I don't know. So what do you think? Maybe this is a hard question, but I'm going to ask you this anyway. Did the brains carry this season?
Yeah.
Okay.
The casting on Braun may be the thing we look back on.
Yeah.
Paulie, tick. Noonan, tick.
I love Paulie. Love
stuff.
Paulie.
Yeah. The brains, I mean, you can look at the confessional charts and you can look at the Jizzy charts, and in both ways, it's very, very orange, which in this case was actually the brains. I want to just look at, I'm bringing up the confessional charts again. AJ didn't get confessionals in the first 2 episodes and had his breakout episode in episode 3. Wonder how that stacks up against other winners who I feel like are introduced to us ASAP. Now, it's very, very hard because I do feel like Australian Survivor knows that it gets that first 3 episode week, and that's like premiere week. And we really did get it eventually in that week, clearly to extremes when he gets 9 confessionals. But I wonder, like, I remember even Haley got like 4 and then like a bunch of zeros and then broke out, but we still met her. And I wonder if that's like a bit of an edit trick, whereas like compared to Miles, he got 2 in that first episode. We definitely knew Miles early on. Like AJ in the first episodes, we didn't really know. So that's something interesting. I also think that, like, not on numbers, but on pure story, I do think that Miles has, like, I've loved being on the bottom and I've, like, owned it. I've claimed it. I've reclaimed my rat status, my ratus, his ratus. Versus AJ, I think gets a lot of, like, I'm going to win, like, a cocky possible downfall edit. Whereas, like, Miles, I get more of a journey edit. And maybe that's just true compared to what they've experienced. And maybe that's also, again, what they're delivering. But I also think, like, the tone of the content is more in Miles's favor.
Well, you may be convincing me here. Actually, I've just come up with this thought that, like, is AJ's edit a losing finalist edit in the vein of George from Brains vs. Brawn, and then Miles and AJ do find a way to get to the end. And I do agree with you that Miles's case is very palatable, I think, because his receipts are flowing with the idol plays and the advantages, his growth arc, and I do think that Miles has undergone in a better pace a perception shift.
A RHAP
that Kaylin hasn't hit that yet, right? Whereas Miles has been a little bit more steady, where it was like pretty bleak for him at the start. I can relate. And but I think just by virtue of doing public moves, paced at a pretty good like clip, I think he would be difficult to beat if on Tribal Council. So I wonder if that's where it's going.
They both have good arguments. They both have good things to exploit in the game of extremes. I do think on edit, it would be Miles. I think AJ would have friends on the jury, to be fair. That's been his game. It's also, again, a harder game to speak to because it's not as visible. It's like, I had the thing, I played the thing, but it's the friendships, the people who rely on it.
I think there's a correlation between not knowing what rocks are and possibly being a bitter juror.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, because if you don't know enough about the game to know what rocks are, then you're also the kind of juror, to be fair, like Kristen, who comes up into the jury villa and even in her final words, and it's like, it shows that kindness is key and that I try to turn to the dark side, and that was bad. It's like, firstly, I mean, I don't even know where to start with that sentence. Firstly, like, yes, kindness is key, but no part of strategizing on Survivor is kind or not kind, unless obviously if you're bullying people. I'm saying on strategy, no part of that is unkind. And then it's like, you didn't really turn to the dark side. The things you try to do in the dark side didn't work. And had you turned more to the dark side, you probably would have won. Not won, but you would have done better. So it's like every part of that is wrong. And people might not like AJ cutting them as their allies if he's been so close to people. And I do agree with you. It's like, if you don't know what rocks are, you also don't understand, like, we've been betraying people for 5 years, and we're okay with that. And even honestly in the new era, often we are not. Even the people who know what rocks are to extremes in the new era, while they know to take out the threats, they actually don't always know to, like, vote to validate that. The emotions still overcome that, even with extreme superfan knowledge. So for the people who don't know that as much, I'm sure that's hurtful and confusing. And probably hard to overcome from a bit of jury perspective. But
we'll see. Kristen, if you're listening to this, I did respect your effort. I did. I thought she was trying to do things. And I'm not crapping on anybody. It's just like, we'll see. I mean, the edit's kind of as all we have to go off of.
Yeah, Andy, I'm 20 episodes deep into this, and my filter left me like 17 episodes ago, and I'm like, Kristen, it's fine. But I think Kristen was very kind. My point is that she never turned to the dark side, but also turning to the dark side would have been fine, is still kind, and you should have done more of it. That's just my notes on that one sentence that she said. And that's where I am 20 episodes in. Okay, last question before the thunderstorm comes for us.
Yes.
Different countries. Because I love this question because it's like, let's no doubt about it. Another Andy asked what your favorite plurality Australian Survivor vote is. Do you have a favorite? Because there have been some good ones.
Here's what comes to my mind, because I don't even know if this is a plurality situation. I don't think this is a plurality situation. I'm not sure. You have to fill me in. What comes to my mind as this answer is that I was obsessed and fixated on AK in All Stars doing a safety split to counteract the threat of a minority vote split.
Yeah.
That was something I was obsessed with. The thing is, and you can, if you maybe walk me through some of the successful plurality votes, I can answer this question better. But what's funny is that this season there's been a meta with, maybe due to the buddy system, there's so many split votes being proposed, and then every episode someone's like, well, we can do a plurality. We can do a plurality. But I don't think that's ever, like, this season hasn't had any interesting plurality results.
No, this season, no. But just in general, exactly. Australian Survivor.
I know.
Definitely there's been a lot. I mean, yeah, coming over the top of the plurality was what they said from the Rocks, which is obviously something that you did. We talked about it last week because I thought they should have done that at the current vote. The great ones from history, I mean, I think that AK
the 2-1-1 Brains versus Brawn, that was great.
All the 2-1-1s. That's probably, I mean, the 2-1-1 in Brains versus Brawn. That's an all-timer. Actually, almost every merge vote in Brains v Brawn was a plurality vote. Also, the 2-2-1 at the final 5 was great. There was so many good ones. Wow, we were eating good as a plurality fan in the Brains v Brawn 1 pre-merge. We did really, really love that. But yeah, I mean, like, AK doing the majority counter to minority split. That's fun. I think Janine was doing a lot of that in 2019. It's kind of what you said. It's like, if you have 4, you might as well do 3-1. And then if people end up voting with you, then it becomes a real split. Or if they do a minority vote split, then you have numbers on the other side. It's kind of just about being economical with your majority numbers to put them in different places when you don't need more. Yeah.
If you trust your numbers completely and you're just being numerical about it, there is no reason not to at least do some type of split.
To ever put more numbers than you need.
Right. You should be, theoretically, extremely efficient with your votes and like, just match the enemy's votes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, like, exert your majority, because if the other side could do something like a minority vote split, that's just because they're being more clever than you. Because in that exact situation, the Goliaths could easily have done an AK safety type split, right? And so in theory, you should always be exerting your majority, but that is not the only layer. That is not the only layer, right?
And if you misjudge it, then people use that split majority to come over the top of it, and that's the beauty of Survival, is judging that.
That's really cool.
But theoretically, yes, if you can trust the numbers. But I mean, I think for me, the All-Stars one, to lead to the Rocks discussion we spoke about, where Shawnee pulls over Jackie to come over the top of the split vote to take out Zach, is one that was like, twist-based but fun. The one I always go back to, obviously, is 3-2-2-2. I mean, this is your first Survivor recap. That was actually my first ever Survivor recap with Nick. That week of Australian Survivor 2017. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't meticulous. It was actually just like a complete shit show. But that's what led to the 3-2-2-2. That one's really fun. But I think you actually had it right. The 2-1-1 at the final 4 of Brains v Brawn.
That is my answer.
I think you're right. But what a fun! Should we do that? Should we rank those? Should we do that in a podcast?
I would be down for it. But I just want to say off the top, it is so amazing and cool, and it takes like the minds of Haley and George to like. There are only 4 votes, and you're figuring out a way to be clever and win through being smart. I just like, that's just amazing.
Yeah, it was the final 5 was a 2-2-1, then the final 4 was a 2-1-1, and then the final 3 into Haley and George being the final 2 is like my favorite week, which actually ended up splitting up. But like when we went back and rewatched it, it was a week, and it was like one of my favorite weeks in
because iron sharpens iron. That's what it is. Iron sharpens iron. Haley and George. Yeah.
Anyway, we could node out forever, and maybe we should do the ranking of all Australian Survivor plurality votes, which is again like every Brains v Brawn pro. So if we do it right now, although I have realized that behind you, it's not a light flickering. Like, that's lightning.
Yeah, the storm is real, but my internet is still up. So
let's log off and let you.
Okay, sure.
I don't know why it feels so threatening that you're on the. Is it okay? You're on a computer. That's fine, right? Like, I don't know.
Safe. I'm safe. I just might cut out of the stream.
Right. Okay. I'm glad that you're safe because my parents always like, you don't shower in a storm, but then apparently that's actually fine, and you're not in the shower thinking about Kaylin, which was a callback from before. I'm not just saying it. Andy, this has been so fun. I could talk to you about Survivor for hours and hours. And one time we did in Boston, and then you played Survivor.
I know, that was really cool. No, but this is awesome. I said it at the start in my Australian accent. This is super cool, full circle thing for me. I think it's so amazing to be in the RHAP community and then like go do the thing and then come back. And now I get to just like have access to the great survivor minds like yours. So it was great meeting you back in the day, back in Boston. Look where we are now. How cool is this?
Did we get a photo?
Yeah.
We got a photo?
So not only did we get a photo.
Please send it to me.
Okay. I don't know if I could tell the story, but we do have a photo.
What?
Not only do we have a photo, but it is the photo that I may have used in casting, but I did crop you out, but it was that.
Did you look really good in it?
Yeah, I looked like my contemporary self.
Can you send me that photo?
Oh yeah. Oh, you don't have it? Yeah, I'll send it to you. Okay, definitely. I'll text.
Oh, I'm so excited to see this. Blast from the past.
It's a great photo. Yeah.
Incredible. Okay, well, I've
had 1 month later, I got the email for Survivor 45, which I didn't.
Because of the photo?
Not because of the photo, but it was an amazing timing thing.
Yeah, incredible. I met so many people, and who knows how many more will be picked up from that Bryson Wen event to play American Survivor and know what Rox is in the future. And that is not how they're recruiting people on this show that we're watching now. But I've had the best time, Andy. It's been so much fun to talk Survivor with you. Thank you so much for coming on.
It's been awesome. I'm here anytime, whenever you need me. I would love to talk more. So it's been really, really fun. Thank you so much for having me.
I've loved it. I know that you're also going on vacation, so we managed to work it out, and I'm so happy that we got you. Thank you so much. Where can people find you? Will you be posting vacation snaps?
Oh, this is great. So I will be on my Instagram. So I use Instagram. So it's Andy D Rueda. So that's where I'm at on Instagram. As far as X and everything goes, I did start an X account and I just have not logged on in a very long time. So you can feel free to follow me. I got one tweet on there. It's a tweet I'm very happy about, but it's my only tweet. But that's where I'm at. So mostly Instagram if you want to actually reach me, but that's where I'm at for now.
Okay, I can't wait to see the vacation snaps. I'm jealous. I am going on vacation in 3.5 weeks, but I'm still jealous.
You might get a nice surprise or two when you see the content, but that's all I'll say for now.
Oh, okay. You're full of surprises, and please send me the photo that we have of the two of us. I'm excited to see all of these photos, but thank you so much. WeKnowGlobalSurvivor.com at Shannon Gates for all of the content. So again, the 2 episodes this week, I hope you know that by now at the end of the feedback show, but we had Chappelle and Puya, and then it was a week off for Mike, who has not been cut from the recaps. He will be on Sunday night, and then everything's going to be completely out of whack, and we're just going to do it like that. So we have that, and then we have this, and then obviously I'm going to have both of the X interviews as said. I spoke to Logan earlier today, and we'll have Kristen later on, and Survivor 48. I had Matthew Hayward last week, which was really fun. I have Harry Hills next week, which will be, I'm sure, very fun. Check that out. WeKnowGlobalSurvivor.com for all of that. Andy, thank you so much. This has been so fun.
Same. So good to talk with you.
Yeah.
See you soon, hopefully.
Thanks so much. Thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you to our team behind the scenes. And I will see you next time. Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.